and a zoonocyst unit.
It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward. What we really want to be focused on is following the symptomatic cases.
Over in the US, Democrats are proposing a sweeping police reform bill following weeks of protests against brutality and racism. They're hoping to turn the energy from nationwide unrest into concrete legal changes. One key change is they want to make it easier to prosecute and sue law enforcement officers. A vote is planned in the House of Representatives later this month. Meanwhile, here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson admits the feeling of injustice which has triggered Black Lives Matter protests is based on a cold reality. He says the killing of George Floyd in the US has awakened in anger, and he accepts some groups face discrimination in education, employment and criminal law. But he posted a video on his Twitter account saying peaceful protests are being undermined by a minority.
Those who attack public property or the police, who injure the police officers who are trying to keep us all safe, those people will face the full force of the law. Not just because of the hurt and damage they're causing, but because of the damage they're doing to the cause.
And there's going to be a new round of arms control talks between the US and Russia. Senior officials will meet in Vienna on June the 22nd. The aim for Washington is to enlist Moscow's help in bringing China to the table. The White House wants a three-way treaty to limit the stockpile of nuclear weapons. In the past, China has dismissed trilateral talks. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hi, I'm Bill Hageman, Withum's proud managing partner and CEO. We recognize this disruptive time is unsettling. For the past 45 years, Withum has been committed to helping our clients, our people, and our communities to be in a position of strength with innovative business advisory, tax, and assurance solutions. If you need guidance on business interruption and continuity issues or remote workplace solutions, please visit our website at Withum.com. Together, we can get through these challenging times.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Emily Chang.
U.S. federal and state regulators are working to require Google to give its users a choice about what search engine to use in a continued antitrust probe into the search giant. Regulators seeking the help of one of Google's competitors, and that is DuckDuckGo. Joining us is the CEO and founder of DuckDuckGo, Gabriel Weinberg. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, you've been a competitor to Google for many years and for a long time in trying to convince users with a sort of privacy-first stance why DuckDuckGo is a better alternative. For those who don't know, what is your case to users about why they should use your search engine instead of Google's?
Sure. I mean, quite simply, people are tired of being tracked online. And at DuckDuckGo, we really just believe people who want to be able to choose a private option online should be able to do so simply And we enable that for everybody. So we have a private search engine alternative to Google, but we also have a mobile browser that blocks trackers across the internet. So if you're kind of annoyed about ads following you around, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg of harms, of privacy harms online, there's discrimination, propaganda, etc. We protect you from all that.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we are seeing most European stock indexes in the red this morning. The DAX down 0.2, the FTSE down 0.3% here in London. The Stock 600, however, fairly flat, and similarly so for the CAC 40. US futures also pointing slightly lower. It follows a mixed trading day in Asia, where the Hang Seng is currently up 1.7%. We did see Japanese equities close lower, though, and it all comes after the S&P 500 yesterday erased all its losses for the year. Global equities basically back at pre-coronavirus levels. In stock specifics, I am keeping a close eye on British American Tobacco. This morning, they came out with an update. They're cutting their full-year revenue forecast. They are maintaining their dividend, though, but as I said, down about 3% here in London at the moment. Now, the dollar is continuing its longest slide in more than a decade, although we have seen it turn slightly higher in the past hour, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index currently up 0.2%. So moving away from that 3-month low, we are seeing the yen up 0.3 above 108. It did dip below that level earlier. We are also seeing sterling a bit weaker now, below 127, down 0.4%. The euro holding around 112 today. Bond yields tracking lower after the World Bank said the global economy will contract the most since World War II. 10-year Treasury yields currently down more than 4 basis points at 83 basis points. 10-year bund yields at negative 33. 10-year gilt yields sliding 2 basis points to 31 basis points. Finally, WTI crude is up about 0.5% at $38 a barrel. Brent trading at $40 a barrel. This after oil fell yesterday on Saudi plans to end extra production cuts by the end of this month. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Dane Garrins with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Lockdowns across the world may have prevented about 500 million coronavirus infections. That's according to the first peer-reviewed analysis of the impact of health policies. The virus has now caused some 7 million reported cases of COVID-19 globally, with more than 400,000 fatalities. Germany's recorded an increase in the number of new coronavirus cases. There were 359 new cases this morning, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. That compares to 300 yesterday. The country's reproduction factor of the virus, known as R0, rose above the key threshold of 1. Thousands of mourners have been viewing the coffin of George Floyd 2 weeks after his killing led to worldwide demonstrations. People have been filing through a church in Houston, Texas, ahead of his funeral later today. Meanwhile, a police officer who's been charged with Floyd's murder has appeared in court, and his bail's been set at $1.25 million. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, the UK government will today discuss plans for easing lockdown restrictions further. It comes as the country reported the lowest number of daily deaths since the measures were imposed, with London reporting no new coronavirus deaths. At the same time, The Times is reporting that the NHS smartphone app designed to track and reduce the spread will be ready for launch at the start of July. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's UK government editor, Tim Ross. Tim, great to have you with us. So yesterday we were talking about the controversy surrounding the quarantine measures being imposed for arrivals in the UK. Now we turn to the opening of non-essential stores on June the 15th. And one of the big questions for when we get further openings of pubs and hospitality businesses at the beginning of July, if it goes ahead as planned, is around loosening the 2-meter social distancing rule. Is this one of the biggest controversies when it comes to balancing the politics versus the science?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we've seen some increasing divergence really between the scientists and the government in recent weeks. You'll remember back in March, Johnson was very keen to stress that at all times the government was following the science. Well, it's not quite the same story at the moment. Last week, the Prime Minister was at a press conference, and he said quite clearly he would love to reduce that 2-metre rule. In reality, the scientific advisors, we think, are pretty reluctant to doing that, even though the rule is lower in other countries. So it looks like being quite an important battle, particularly for that hospitality industry, as you say, and it's going to be the subject, we think, of a debate at Cabinet this morning too, when ministers will decide or at least discuss how to go about easing restrictions on hospitality.
Yeah, Tim, one of the big issues, of course, in this scientists not quite on the same line as the politicians, I think, is this new app that's being talked about. The Times reporting this morning that it's designed to trace and track and reduce the spread, will be ready for a launch at the start of July. Now, earlier in this programme, we were speaking to Professor Michael Lewis at the University of Birmingham, who is expressing grave doubts about whether this will work, whether there'll be enough people to use it, why, in fact, they're using an app that really hasn't been tried and tested yet. Tim? Have we lost Tim? I think we may have lost Tim. Tim, can you hear us? No, I think we may have lost him there, Nera, but it is interesting. Let me just reflect on what Michael Lewis was saying, because he was saying two things, really. One, that the app itself isn't working as expected.
Tim back, I think, Roger.
Tim, did you hear my question?
I did, about the app, yes, sorry.
Could you give us what do you think on that?
Well, it's one of those funny things. The government decided quite early on they wanted to do their own version of this app. There were other technological solutions available, and they went through the process of developing their own system through the NHS technology experts and trialling it on the Isle of Wight. It's taken a very long time to get up and running, and they've gone ahead again with lifting the lockdown measures in a sort of gradual way before the app is up and running and before that track and trace system is really fully operational. And that's opening up a lot of questions about, again, how the government is handling this next phase in the virus response. And I think it'll be interesting to see, really, whether the app is in fact ready for July, as promised, and quite what it looks like and how it operates. There have been some teething problems, and we'll just have to see, again, whether this is something that works properly or not.
Tim, really briefly, it wasn't a great week in terms of Brexit process last week. Can we look forward to any more progress in the coming weeks?
Well, the thing that everyone's really looking forward to now on Brexit is what's being called a high-level meeting, and whether that's a physical face-to-face meeting or not, it will be very important for... Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Tim. I think we're beginning to lose the line a bit there, but...
Johnson and von der Leyen are supposed to be meeting.
Indeed. We're running out of time anyway. Tim, thank you so much for being with us. Tim Ross there, the UK's government editor, talking to us about, well, what's going to happen with Brexit. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Adjectives are in short supply as stocks continue to charge back from their pandemic lows. Analysts are using words like monumental to describe the rally, which has seen the S&P 500 recover to within 5% of its all-time high just 53 days after bottoming out. Enjoy it while you can, says Nancy Tengler at Laffer Tengler. She thinks the road ahead could be bumpy.
In the summer, we think you're going to get some sort of a normal correction, and then the election takes over, and that sort of carries us through the end of the year.
The NASDAQ closed at an all-time high yesterday. The Dow has a little less than 7% to go. There will be little sparkle in Tiffany's quarterly earnings as it opens its books today. Analysts are expecting a loss due to pandemic-related store closures. Tiffany is in the midst of being acquired by France's LVMH, which reportedly is having second thoughts. Signet Jewelers, the parent of Kay, Jared, and other chains, reports as well. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Who's in your corner? At Commonwealth Financial Network, our advisors would say we are. Our supportive environment lets you be true to yourself, and our culture of accountability means we don't just ask for your feedback. We act on it so we can deliver the solutions you need to enrich the lives of your clients and build the business you've always dreamed of. Ready to discover the difference? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, rise to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, 30 minutes into the equity market open, we've moved into the red now. We did start slightly in the green, but now the Stock 600 is down 0.25 percentage point. So we're looking at 2 days of declines for Europe's equity benchmark. The FTSE 100 down 0.5%. The CAC 40 lower by 0.4%. The DAX down by 0.7%. The IBEX and FTSE MIB leading losses, both lower by more than 1%. Now, what a round trip the S&P 500 has made. The top of the helter-skelter is one comment I saw this morning as it erased its 2020 losses and has rallied 45% from a March 23rd low, 5% from a record high. Looking at futures, they are now turning negative in the US. S&P, Dow and NASDAQ futures all lower by at least 0.1%. S&P E-minis down 0.4%. Ed Yardeni questioning whether it was a bear market that we saw at all, or whether if it was just a panic attack. It matters because it matters as to whether what we are seeing in this rally is a bear market bounce or whether it's actually actually just the continuation of the bull market after a blip. Taking a look at the 10-year Treasury yield, that is lower by 5 basis points now. So actually a risk-off tone starting to build across assets. 82 basis points on that 10-year yield. 10-year bund yield slips a basis point to negative 33. Some out there, like NatWest Markets, say we could see the 10-year bund yield turn positive this year. The 10-year gilt yield down 2 basis points. Another sign of the risk-off creeping back is some dollar strength in the Bloomberg Dollar Index. After 9 straight days of declines, it was heading for its longest streak of declines in over a decade. And taking a look at oil, that has turned negative too. It was a little bit positive earlier. WTI down 0.2%, 38.12. Brent crude at $40.62 a barrel, down 0.4%. So there does seem to be a little risk-off sentiment sweeping through all the asset classes, Roger.
Right, well, let's move on to some of today's top stories. Now, Boris Johnson is going to set out his plans today for easing the national lockdown. That's after officials reported the lowest number of daily coronavirus deaths since restrictions were imposed. Last month, the Prime Minister said non-essential retailers could reopen on June the 15th if the threat of the virus continued to recede.
The global economy will contract the most since World War II this year. That's according to the World Bank. It also sees emerging nations shrinking for the first time in at least 6 decades. Global GDP could shrink over 5% in 2020, potentially sending millions into poverty.
In top corporate news, Cathay Pacific's got a lifeline in the midst of a near freeze on international travel. Hong Kong's flagship airline has announced a $5 billion government-led rescue plan. The government will own 6% of Cathay Pacific once the recapitalisation is completed.
And France is earmarking 15 billion euros to help its struggling aerospace sector. The rescue plan includes an extension of payroll subsidies and funds for developing greener travel options. The package includes loan guarantees already extended to the likes of Air France, KLM. It will also help bolster plane maker Airbus and hundreds of parts suppliers.
Well, for more on that, let's go live to Paris, where Bloomberg's Caroline Conan is standing by. Caroline, good morning and welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us. Now, we do now at least have a sense of how this is going to play out, not from the official announcement, but from the Transport Minister, Jean-Baptiste Djebbari, speaking on French radio this morning. It sounds like a very large amount of money, 15 billion euros, $17 billion, including extension of part-time work subsidies. Is it going to be enough to help this really, really badly hit industry?
Well, the Finance Minister, Bruno Le Maire, is actually trying to detail all the measures in his 15 billion euro plan. And he does say that if the government does nothing, it's as many as 100,000 jobs in France linked to the aerospace industry that could be lost. The sector employs more than 200,000 people in France, so that's nearly half of those jobs that could go if nothing was done. So we'll see if these 15 billion euros are enough to save the industry. Of course, you're thinking about Airbus, but also about the hundreds of smaller suppliers and the defense suppliers such as Safran and Thales. This is part of a broader rescue package for the tourism sector that is worth as much as 40 billion euros. And airlines, for example, will be able to wait for 18 months for payments of their delayed deliveries. And this waiting time, if you want, will be guaranteed by the state, meaning that Airbus and suppliers will not lose money for the next 18 months, even if those deliveries are cancelled or postponed. And of course, there should be a plan to accelerate the green transition at least 1.5 billion euros in order to help to use this crisis to go towards greener planes and hybrid planes in the future.
So are these packages and these measures, are they actually going to succeed in saving jobs, Caroline?
Well, we'll see at the moment. Basically, you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of French people under partial unemployment. And these measures, of course, are designed to keep those jobs. So if you extend partial unemployment, you don't need layoffs. You basically keep these people on artificial payroll from the state while the crisis passes, at least for the next couple of years when the aerospace industry can rebound and the long-haul flights can really start as normal. So at the moment, the government has spent billions billion for partial unemployment, and for the tourism sector, this is going to be extended until at least the end of 2020.
Now, Caroline, we've also heard this morning from Villeroy de Gallo of the Bank of France, really giving us a pretty gloomy prospect about the French slump that they envisage. It will be over 10%, they're saying, and take 2 years to recover. I mean, these are pretty strong forecasts, aren't they?
That's right, and the French government was talking about around 8% contraction for this year just a few weeks ago, and now we're talking about more than 10%. In fact, if you look at the numbers for the first quarter already, GDP contracted 5.3%, but the lockdown in France only started at the end of the first quarter, so clearly these numbers had to be increased. The Bank of France actually says the country will need 2 years to recover. Unemployment, jobless people, of course, is going to rise. They expect unemployment to reach a record high at 12%. That's an extra 1 million people without a job in France.
Bloomberg's Caroline Conant joining us from France. Thank you so much. Now let's get the world news with Leanne Gerrans. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, Naira. Over in the US, Democrats are proposing a sweeping police reform bill following weeks of protests against brutality and racism. They're hoping to turn the energy from nationwide unrest into concrete legal changes. One key change is they want to make it easier to prosecute and sue law enforcement officers. A vote is planned in the House of Representatives later this month. Lockdowns across the world may have prevented about 500 million coronavirus infections. That's according to the first peer-reviewed analysis of the impact of health policies. It comes as the World Health Organization says people without symptoms passing on the virus is rare. It contradicts speculations about the prevalence of so-called asymptomatic transmission. Now, in Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro is battling to reopen the economy as the coronavirus shows no signs of easing. The country is facing anti-government protests and allegations of a data cover-up to hide the true death toll of the disease. Bloomberg's Shannon Sims has more.
As a result, a fray has broken out between state reporting agencies and the federal government. But as a result, there's great doubt across the country about how valid the numbers that Brazil is reporting are and whether they can be counted upon. The World Health Organization's executive director commented on that, saying that the WHO trusts Brazil to clear up the confusion. In Houston, Texas, Shannon Sims, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And plans for the most sweeping changes to Russia's constitution since it was adopted nearly 30 years ago include one big one, an amendment that will allow President Vladimir Putin to remain in power until 2036. Bloomberg's Henry Mayer reports.
As the date of the referendum approaches on a constitutional amendment, Moscow has lifted an unpopular lockdown imposed to combat the spread of the coronavirus. The epidemic and a related crash in oil prices caused an economic slump that has hit the president's approval ratings. In Moscow, Henry Mayer, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Leanne, thanks for that. Now, coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we're going to be talking to Fiona Frick, Unigestion CEO, and trying, in some way, Nera, to try and work out whether the markets are running way ahead of what seems to be a whole batch of very difficult data for the global economy. And yet, as we said, the S&P's more than made up what it lost and is now heading into, well, very bullish territory.
Yeah, absolutely, and love to get her view as well on whether she agrees with Ed Yardeni in terms of questioning whether the sell-off we saw from February to March was indeed a bear market, because it has implications for the psychology in the market and for what happens next. As for today, 40 minutes into the equity market open, we've seen some red on the screen for European equities. A second day of declines, the Stock 600 down 0.5%. This is Bloomberg.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient.
That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
So you've got a face mask, right? It's itchy and uncomfortable, right? Well, you're still advised to wear one, but doing your essential shopping or daily exercise could feel so much better. If you're looking for high fashion, high function cotton masks that are soft and kind on the skin, go to facemaskfashion.co.uk for reusable, washable, sports and fashion face masks in a multitude of colours and patterns. They're not medical grade, so you're not depriving health workers of vital PPE, but they do have activated carbon filters for your protection. They look great, feel great, and are dispatched from the UK. facemaskfashion.co.uk.
We're Cadent. Keeping you and our people safe is our main focus, and our vital work must continue. You'll start to see more of us in your area as we increase our work to upgrade the gas pipes to keep the energy flowing into your homes and businesses. We may need to come into your home to complete this work, but rest assured our engineers are following all government guidance on PPE and social distancing. We continue to provide the critical gas emergency service, and if you smell gas, call 0800 111 999. To all other key workers, we would like to say a big thank you from everyone at Cadent. Cadent, your gas network.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the Coronavirus Job Retention and Self-Employment Income Support Schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Pauline. Love may be blind, but it has a new smell.
Pauline, the new fragrance from Euro Millions winner Pauline Hinchcliffe.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £33 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment. feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we are seeing European stock markets in the red this morning. The DAX down 1.2%, the FTSE sliding 0.8, and the Stock 600 lower by 0.6%. US futures also pointing to a lower open. It comes after the S&P 500 yesterday erased all its losses for the year. We are seeing global equities now back at pre-coronavirus levels. In stock specifics, I'm keeping a close eye on British American Tobacco, sliding 2.5% after it downgraded its full-year revenue forecast. Orange also weaker by 1.5% in Paris trading. This after Redburn downgraded the stock, citing rising risks on its wholesale revenue, so something to watch there. The dollar is slightly higher today, up 0.3%, moving away from that 3-month low, according to the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index. We're also seeing the yen bid up 0.5% at 107.8, so below that crucial 108 level. Quite an interesting move there. We are seeing sterling weaker, down 0.4 at 1.267. The euro also sliding 0.3, but still trading around 1.12. We are seeing bond yields tracking lower after the World Bank said the global economy will contract the most since World War II. 10-year Treasury yields now down more than 5 basis points at 82 basis points. 10-year bond yields lower by a basis point at negative 33, and 10-year gilt yields trading at 31 basis points this morning. Finally, WTI crude is lower by more than 1% now at $37 a barrel. Brent slipping similarly so to $40 a barrel. But bear in mind that oil did fall yesterday after Saudi said it plans to end extra production cuts by the end of this month. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Lynn Garrins with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. North Korea is cutting communications with the South over what it calls hostile acts. The statement appears to refer to leaflets critical of leader Kim Jong-un being sent across the border by anti-Pyongyang activists. The two nations are about to mark the 20th anniversary of the first summit between their leaders. There were hopes this could be a moment of reconciliation. There's a new round of arms control talks between the US and Russia. Senior officials will meet in Vienna on June the 22nd, and the aim for Washington is to enlist Moscow's help in bringing China to the table. The White House wants a 3-way treaties to limit the stockpile of nuclear weapons. And in the Netherlands, Amsterdam's planning to clean up its sex and drugs tourism in a reboot. This comes after the coronavirus pandemic raged in March and April, turning it into a ghost town. The mayor has laid out a plan for locals to reclaim their city. It includes buying property and limiting permits to ensure that the old city is not filled with cannabis coffee shops and sex workers. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, I've been to Amsterdam twice, but only for work, so I've never actually been to any of these cannabis coffee shops or to the red light district, which I suppose is quite sad if it's going to disappear now. But I guess, there's two ways of looking at this. You can understand the frustration of the locals, for sure, as streets are having to be cleaned up every day. But on the other side, some say, look, that's what draws the tourists in, and then they spend on other stuff like hotels and normal restaurants.
Well, I went to Amsterdam for a holiday last year. Not for work, so I saw this side of Amsterdam. But what was really interesting is I didn't realize that 1 million tourists visit the city on average every single month. That's completely surpassing the population in Amsterdam. But of course, as the coronavirus lockdowns come in, there's just not much for people who actually live there to do. So they're looking to create a little bit of a balance.
Well, and also for tourists who go there for things other than, I'm guessing, might have drawn you there on occasion. There's art, there's the Rembrandts, there's lovely food, a lot of Indonesian food there. It's a wonderful place, and it's beautiful. It doesn't need any of this.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I guess the other worry, though, Leanne, is if they try and get rid of things like the red light district, it could criminalise it. The coffee shops could go underground. I mean, there's so many conversations we could have about this.
I feel like it's a long one, but it is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's just really how Europe and the world is looking to recover after the coronavirus. And, you know, as lots of people have said, the new normal. So what is the new normal going to be in lots of European cities across, you know?
Yeah. What's Soho in London going to look like? Leanne Gerrans, thank you so much with the world news. Now let's get to our guest for the rest of the hour and back to the markets. Joining us down the line is Unigestion CEO Fiona Frick. Fiona, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us on the show. We're marking the point where the S&P 500 has erased its losses for the year. 45% rally from that March 23rd low, where something like 5% from a record high. And what's really seems to have caught people's attention overnight is Ed Yardeni's comments, where he said, look, it's the mother of all melt-ups, Mamu, and he's also said, not sure whether what we actually had from February to March was a bear market. It matters because if it was a bear market, we could just be looking at a bear market bounce right now. But if it wasn't, then perhaps it was just a panic sell-off, which is how he describes it, in the midst of a bull market. Which was it out of those two, in your view, and what does that mean for future gains?
So I would say first that we shouldn't forget the economical situation. So as the World Bank said yesterday, it's going to be one of the worst years since World War II, with like minus 5.2 in global economic output for 2020. So I would say that the correction that happened in March, taking into account the pandemic, the impact on the economy and the impact on society, was well deserved, I would say. It was obviously very quick and very steep, but there was reason to panic, and I would say that the market followed what was the prediction of the economy. Then I would say that the answer of the central bank has been a game changer, because in fact by coming so quickly and with so much breadth, they showed that they were ready to play a sort of bridge between the economy on lockdown and the economy going back to normal. So it explains the rally we had in April and in May. The interesting thing is that the rally in April was much more of a technical rebound, but there was not a lot of players in it. The rally is really taking some legs now in the end of May and beginning of June, with some more cyclical stocks coming back, and you can see that this is quite aligned also with the economy, because some data are getting a bit better. So I would say that we are very in sync between economy and the market.
Yeah, it's what's been very interesting looking at some of the things you've written, Fiona, is about how you see, the central bank heartbeat as being the key of all this. And of course, we've got a key central bank moment this week, tomorrow, with the Fed. What are you expecting to come from them? What would you like to hear?
So I think they will say that they will remain dovish, and that they are determined. They have a strong determination to keep monetary policy loose, and that they are committed to take all kind of instruments they need to promote recovery. We have seen that compared to 2008, not only they have come quicker and bigger, but they also have increased strongly the breadth of instruments that they've been acting on, with an effect on the economy which is much more direct than in 2008 when it was mainly government bond buying. So I think they will continue in that direction, and that the interest rate will remain at zero for a long time.
I found it really interesting, Fiona, that you said the market's kind of been following the economy, because a lot of people have spoken about a market disconnected from the real world. And then you've got others who also say the market leads. It's a discounting measure that really sort of acts ahead of what's happening in terms of data. So if you think that the market has been following the economy, what does that mean for what you see for the rest of the year in terms of equity markets and perhaps even treasury yields, which are down somewhat at the start of this week, but last week treasuries saw their worst week since September, 24 basis point jump in the 10-year yield?
So I would say that we expect the treasury yield to remain quite capped, because the move of the Fed, which is buying quite strong which is buying quite a lot of government bonds, will put a cap on the fact that Treasury yield could be going up. It would be also dangerous if Treasury yield go up for the equity market, because reason why the equity market goes up so strongly is because there is such a spread between earning yields and government yields. So I think that the Fed will control government yield, and this should remain positive for the equity market.
And what about the situation in Europe? Because there are special factors there, obviously, and we do know, of course, massive support from the ECB coming through. Christine Lagarde talking about even more potentially coming down the line. Is Europe an area where that optimism you're talking about is very clear?
I think for the first time in Europe, we see the potential of a fiscal policy, which was not there in 2008. We've seen the central bank acting very strongly. So I think there is a very positive momentum in Europe about creating an area which is more than just a monetary union, but more an economic union.
So what does that mean in terms of your allocation, Fiona? Are you starting to allocate more to European assets?
Yes. So we've been putting back some risk since, I would say, April in the book. So buying equities, buying credits. In the beginning, it was more on more the safest part, I would say, of the equity, typically more defensive, etc. What we see now, because of economical numbers getting a bit better, there is a rotation toward more cyclical stocks and more. And we become more positive on Europe and even on emerging markets.
All right. Fiona, thanks so much for being with us. Fiona Frick there, Unigestion CEO, joining us live on the line, giving us a sense of where the global economy may be going and whether the shares, the equities market has got it right. This is Bloomberg.
Portfolio analyst.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability. Mobile data charges may apply.
Dear Dad, happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus.
We are very much in a picture of monetary dominance.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
We are in a national crisis. I think it is for all parties to pull together.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepke.
And a good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
So in terms of the markets this morning, European equities actually selling off down 0.5%. We saw a 3-week rally up until Friday. The last couple of days, though, have been negative, even though, of course, the big headline in stocks, at least, has been the S&P erasing 2020 losses, so a 15-week high for the S&P. What do you make of it, Matt?
I mean, that is, to me, that's the most exciting story. When I saw these headlines cross last night, I immediately forwarded them to my mother. I will never forget when she called me in tears in the middle of March, right? Because she's on the precipice of retiring, and she was watching her account drop by 10% increments. And I was like, Mom, just hold on. These things move around. They'll come back. So now she's back, at least to even where she started in 2020. And I think a lot of people, I'm not sure about Europeans, but Americans, have that terrifying experience when they see their retirement accounts drop. Europeans aren't as invested in the stock market as Americans are. No. I think that's one of the most exciting stories of the day. There's so much today. The A380, a French official said it was an old plane. To me, it felt brand new, but I looked it up. It's from 2005, so Porsche was still making the 996 back then. And then Leanne is going to talk to us about a story, Amsterdam shutting down or moving the brothels and the marijuana bars out of the city center because the lockdown has made them realize it's a complete tourist trap and the locals get no use out of it. I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the pictures, deserted central Amsterdam. I think some tech companies are coming back into the city. So yeah, very interesting. The consequences of this pandemic. And we're going to talk about part of that very important issue here in the UK, the coronavirus obviously affecting BAME people so much more severely. Joining us later this hour is going to be the CEO of Impact X, which is a black-led venture capital fund led out of London. And I'm really excited to have that conversation with Eric Collins about what is going on in terms of black businesses in the UK post the pandemic, what the government needs to do in order to help them. In terms of the markets, though, so as I mentioned, the US Stock 600 down 0.3%. Let's also mention the Xetra DAX is down 0.7%. And US futures after that stellar rally, well, S&P 500 E-mini futures are actually negative now, down by 0.5%. In the bond markets also, we had Christine Lagarde speaking yesterday, urging the politicians to get on with it with the rescue package for Europe. German yields at negative 32 basis points, so dropping 1 basis point, and US yields actually down by almost 5 basis points at 82 basis points. This, as we see the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index actually turned positive, so stronger 0.25%. The pound, though, weakens, and crude oil also down this morning at $40.52 though for Brent crude. So we're still above the 40 line.
All right, so that's your market snapshot right now, and we have obviously a fantastic show coming up for you today. Let's kick it off with Mike Bell. He joins us from JP Morgan Asset Management. Mike, I want to start by asking you about the comeback kid, the S&P 500. It's back to even for 2020. We're still looking at horrible drops in Europe. I mean, the FTSE is still down 15% year to date. The IBEX 35 in Madrid almost 20. Why are European markets doing so much worse than U.S. equity indexes?
I think it's largely down to the composition of the indices, right? So if you look at the U.S. banks are still down about 25%. U.S. energy companies are still down about 25%. But U.S. online retailers are up nearly 30%. Software companies are up nearly 20%. So there's just a lot more software and online retail and those kind of places that have done very well in the U.S. than there is in Europe and the U.K. And I think that makes up a large part of the differential in performance that you've seen in markets.
Okay, how strong then do you think the rally actually is? How vulnerable might it be? Not a single stock in the S&P 500 index has been down in the past 10 weeks. Is that an ominous sign in your view that sort of everything's rallying, and if there's a little pause, and we heard obviously yesterday the start date from the NEBR about when the recession began in the US, how weak is the stock market rally, do you think?
Well, so as I said, there's quite a lot of differentiation in terms of what's up and what's down. So there's some stocks which are up quite a lot year to date, and some which are still down quite a lot year to date, despite the fact they've rallied a lot off of the lows. But so looking within that, I think it really all comes down to the health scenario, right? And it seems to me like there is a risk that potentially this virus is not under control yet. So when I look at the 4 largest states in the US, 3 of them have got rising infection rates at the moment. So that gives me some cause for concern that perhaps the economy is opening a little bit too quickly and that we don't have this virus under control yet. Now, if that were to lead to people choosing to stay at home more as infection rates continue to pick up, or indeed if governments around the world decided that further lockdown measures were necessary, then I think all sectors would be vulnerable to that kind of negative news on the health front. But it would be the most beaten up names which would probably suffer most, as people went from worrying about just their liquidity to actually potentially worrying about solvency concerns for some of the airlines and hotels and department store groups, which are some of the worst performers year to date. On the other hand, if the health situation improves and actually it looks like we can see a sustainable and full reopening of the economy, well, then I look to some of the names that have done very well, some of your online retailers, for example, and think, well, actually, probably people aren't going to be shopping online forever. Some of those revenues are going to flow back into your department stores and your more traditional retail. And so then you could see more catch-up for some of the beaten-up names like the department stores, the retail REITs, at the expense of some of the stocks that have done very well, like some of the online retailers and software providers.
Yeah, sadly, I think, at least in my house, it's stuck. We love shopping online, and we're going to do it too much, probably forever. You bring up a great point about some concerning virus statistics. For example, here in Germany, where I'd argue, that they've been so much smarter and better at containing this thing than the Brits or the Americans, we're starting to see the reproduction rate climb back up above 1. Now, not talking about huge infections, but look, our economy here is totally open again. We're going, if I had hair, I could go get a haircut. We're going to get pedicures and manicures. We have restaurants and bars and gyms that are open, and now the reproduction rate is climbing. I've heard this concern from a couple of investors today. Mike, how closely do you think, global Wall Street is watching that?
I mean, I think it's the absolute key to this. Right? Let's not forget that the market sell-off and this recession was caused by the virus. And then recently, the market has rallied very strongly. But the virus doesn't seem to be completely under control. Now, in Europe, if you look actually in most parts of Europe, you haven't really seen a meaningful pickup in infection rates. So it looks like in China and Europe, maybe they started to reopen the economy once they got infection rates low enough for it to be a sustainable reopening. Whereas in the UK and certainly parts of the US, I have concerns that perhaps the economy is starting to reopen because of the economic consequences of the shutdowns, but before the virus and the infection rates have been brought under control. And so to me, that seems like the key risk to the positive sentiment that we see at the moment.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, Matt, the contact tracing app, and Mike, you'll I'm sure have been reading about this too, is not up and running here in the UK, may well not be up and running until September. So very difficult to get control if you don't have the tools in place. Look, just briefly on Christine Lagarde yesterday, Mike, she was encouraging politicians to get on with it in terms of the pandemic package. Are you confident that is going to come through fairly quickly?
I don't know. I certainly hope so, right? It's absolutely key that we do get this package. And if we do, I think it'll be a very positive step for Europe in the direction of more fiscal integration, which, of course, that lack of fiscal integration in Europe has been the kind of fundamental flaw at the heart of the Eurozone ever since it was created. So I think if we do see this package pass, then it's a big positive in that it'll enable further support for Italy in particular and some of the harder hit economies in Europe. But it is absolutely crucial that it gets through.
All right, Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Mike Bell there from JP Morgan Asset Management, coming to us on radio and on Bloomberg Television today. Appreciate your insights in really this important, this important milestone in markets. Let's get over now to Leanne Gerrans with your World National News. Leanne?
Matt, thank you. Boris Johnson will talk his cabinet through his plans for easing lockdown restrictions later today. That comes as the UK reported the lowest number of daily deaths since the measures were imposed, with London reporting no new coronavirus deaths. Health Secretary Matt Hancock says Monday's positive data means the government can press on with its plans, but he denies the easing of the lockdown is about balancing public safety and economic recovery.
There just isn't a trade-off. If we don't have control of this virus, then the economy will suffer yet more. And the job of the government and the work of the government has been to get the infection rate right down, and then the task is to hold it down whilst safely reopening.
Meanwhile, the UK is still on schedule to reopen non-essential shops on June the 15th. The World Health Organization says it's very rare for people without symptoms to pass on the coronavirus. It contradicts speculation about the prevalence of so-called asymptomatic transmission. Let's hear from Maria van Kerkhove, head of the WHO's Emerging Diseases and Zoonocist Unit.
It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward. What we really want to be focused on is following the symptomatic cases.
In other news, over in the US, Democrats are proposing a sweeping police reform bill following weeks of protest against brutality and racism. They're hoping to turn the energy from nationwide unrest into concrete legal changes. One key change is they want to make it easier to prosecute and sue law enforcement officers. A vote is planned in the House of Representatives later this month. And as Matt mentioned earlier, in the Netherlands, Amsterdam's planning to clean up its sex and drugs tourism in a reboot. This comes after the coronavirus pandemic raged in March and April, turning it into a ghost town. The mayor has laid out a plan for locals to now reclaim their city. It includes buying property and limiting permits to ensure that the old city is not filled with just cannabis coffee shops and sex workers. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans, with the World News Update. Now, still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, the White House says that it's still deciding on whether to withdraw troops from Germany. We're going to talk to Bloomberg opinion columnist Andreas Kluth about why he thinks such a move would be a disaster. Of course, this is, decades since the troops have been in Germany. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We're live from London and Berlin this morning.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
The market is unpredictable. BAM gives you certainty. In the face of volatility and illiquidity, BAM-insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, including natural disasters, financial fraud, pension issues, and economic disruption, like the one we're experiencing right now. BAM. Build America Mutual. Ask your broker about BAM-insured municipal bonds.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Rishad Salamat.
Multiplex owners in India have been hit by plunging revenues due to the coronavirus lockdown. One such player is PVR. It's actually the company which pioneered the multiplex revolution in the country. Let's bring in Chairman and MD Ajay Bijli. How bad are things there at the moment? Is it a short-term hit, or does it actually change the structural nature of cinema going in any way?
I think structural change, I don't think will happen, but of course it's a huge, extraordinary event that has happened in the last 100 years, as everybody's become very familiar with history now. Nothing like this has ever happened before. But I think definitely if you are closed for a long time and that there is so much skepticism in people to go out of their homes once the lockdown does open, I think it's going to be a slow burn. We were the first ones to have been asked to lock down, and we'll be the last ones, unfortunately, to be asked to open up. So I think it's going to be a slow burn, people coming out, new movies getting released. There's going to be a tentativeness, but everybody, all establishments, whether your hotels, restaurants, airlines, all are taking safety measures. We'll be taking global standard safety measures to make our customers and guests feel safe and secure. But I do feel that it's going to take time before the industry picks up.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Horder with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. It's the morning after a historic rally yesterday. Quite stunning. The S&P 500 traded back into positive territory for the year. This morning, though, we are seeing a pause in that risk appetite and some of that animal spirit out there. U.S. futures are down more than 0.8%. European equities are firmly in the red now. We are seeing red arrows across the board from London, Paris, Frankfurt to Milan as well. The FTSE MIB and the IBEX as well. Those are heavily down 2%. The Stock 600 is down 0.5%, being led lower by banks, auto parts, and insurance companies. Those are all down more than 1% this morning. We are seeing the Bloomberg Dollar Index to the upside today, up 0.4%. More firmly, it is higher after 9 days of losses. Of course, we all are waiting the Fed policy decision that comes out tomorrow. And oil this morning is also in the red. $40 a barrel, 22 cents on Brent crude. Yesterday, we heard from the Saudi oil minister, His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz. He said that they will end the extra voluntary output curbs at the end of this month. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Leanne, good morning.
Anne-Marie, good morning and thank you. Lockdowns across the world may have prevented about 500 million coronavirus infections. That's according to the first peer review analysis of the impact of health policies. The virus has now caused some 7 million reported cases of COVID-19 globally, with more than 400,000 fatalities. Germany's recorded an increase in the number of new coronavirus cases. There were 359 new cases this morning, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. That compares to 300 yesterday. The country's reproduction factor of the virus, known as R0, rose above the key threshold of 1. And North Korea is cutting communications with the South over what it calls hostile acts. The statement appears to refer to leaflets critical of leader Kim Jong-un being sent across the border by anti-Pyongyang activists. The two nations are about to mark the 20th anniversary of the first summit between their leaders. There were hopes this could be a moment of reconciliation. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Andreas Kluth, who's writing about the U.S. considering cutting its troops in Germany and why that would be another nail in the coffin of the West. So, Andreas, you think... Well, I didn't actually know that America had many soldiers left here. When I was a kid, we used to go to the bases in Stuttgart to attend rodeos and buy chewing tobacco, but I thought they'd all pulled out.
They have largely pulled, out. In the 1960s, that was the peak.
just after Elvis Presley was here. At that time, that the 470,000
in a BMW 507.
That's exactly right. But then since the end of the Cold War, they've been pulling back and really pretty steadily. So, and it hasn't got that much media attention. That's why it's interesting that this is causing such an uproar, and what this says about Trump, what this says about the Germans fearing Trump, etc. But it has been going on for many years. So the question is whether it's going to go even further and be capped at 25,000 troops, because of course this is not just the presence in Germany to deter Russia, but the hub for all of Africa and the Middle East.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of argument, the military argument would go that perhaps the troops aren't best placed in Germany to deal with, the issues that the US wants to deal with. But I think it's massively symbolic, isn't it? And obviously Angela Merkel and President Trump. Do you think the tipping point was that refusal by Merkel to go to the G7 meeting? Is that possible?
It's interesting that we all think that, because that shows how little we think of Trump. Because, by the way, Ben Hodges is the retired former commander of the U.S. Army in Europe. He said, from a strategic and logistical point of view, this would be stupid. Therefore, he doesn't even think it's going to happen. So the fact that we think this is being floated at all and not yet denied in Washington, and then we think that it might be because Trump felt snubbed, that means we're treating the president of the U.S. like a child, because that he doesn't make strategic decisions. He just makes decisions based on stuff like that, which is part of what's really wrong in this German-American relationship.
Is there any possibility that Germany, that Europe will start to really, carry its fair share of its defense? I mean, is it safe to say that it doesn't now and it needs to beef up its own military defense?
First of all, it's fair to say that, and this is an ongoing issue. At least 4 presidents, so Trump is not alone, 4 presidents in a row have been unhappy with Germany in particular and some other European countries for spending much less than the 2% that the NATO members have pledged to spend 2% of their GDP. Germany is more like 1.3%. And it has an army that is really, to be honest, bad. It's not up to scratch. So, and Germany's doing other things like a gas pipeline to Russia that are not. Germany has not been a good ally. That's all true. And yes, there may be some movement in this new world that we're entering, not just because of the coronavirus, but because of Trump. As everyone's thinking, God, we need to make alternative arrangements. In Germany, it'll be a hard sell because, as you know, Matt, it's a very anti-militarist, quasi or pseudo-pacifist country, and just the domestic backlash.
To some extent, anti-American as well. I mean, I was living here in March of 2003 when Bush II invaded Iraq, and I could feel instantly I was really no longer beloved as I had been before.
The anti-Americanism has always been there. And it's coming out now again. Trump is sort of a caricature of what some Germans would imagine Americans to be, especially Germans on the extreme left and the extreme right. They're very similar in being pro-Russia and anti-America in that way. And those are the only people in Germany right now who are celebrating and hoping this actually goes forward, that they pull out and would like all the U.S. and their nuclear weapons to leave Germany.
Feels like the tectonic plates of politics are shifting. Thank you so much to Bloomberg opinion columnist Andreas Kluth for joining us this morning. Bloomberg Opinion, of course, just type OPIN GO on your terminal or have a look at more pieces, bloomberg.com/opinion. We're going to bring you more from the markets next. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Charlie Pellett. New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees has apologized for comments he made in an interview regarding his opposition to Colin Kaepernick's kneeling during the national anthem. And now his wife has apologized as well, saying, quote, "We are the problem." After Brees' comments aired last week, the quarterback was criticized on social media by high-profile athletes, including LeBron James. CrossFit CEO Greg Glassman is apologizing for insensitive tweets on the protests and coronavirus pandemic that drew backlash from consumers and led Reebok to end its partnership with the fitness company. In an emailed statement to Footwear News, Reebok said, quote, "Recently, we have been in discussions regarding a new agreement. However, in light of recent events, we have made the decision to end our partnership with CrossFit HQ." And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Charlie Pellett.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot of financial experts.
He's a former president of the European Central Bank.
Your Global Financial Warriors is a classic textbook. A lot of political experts.
If you were advising the President of the United States, what's the thing that he's not doing that he should do?
And lucky for you, we know a lot of science experts, too.
You talked about those reagents which are necessary for the testing.
It's also the behavioral psychological approach.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, a place for mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Not completing high school is more.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and...
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV show, the Division Series, during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Think live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau. in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller.
And here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker, listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Just want to give you, Caroline, a quick check of what's going on in markets. We do see a bit of a retreat today. Well, more than a bit. We see drops of 1.5% to 2% across European equity indexes, with the FTSE down 99 points to 63.73. The DAX down 215 points to 12,605. And the FTSE MIB and the IBEX 35 both falling about 2%. So drops after the big rallies that we've seen. In terms of U.S. futures, if you're preparing for the open of U.S. equity exchanges after yesterday, the S&P 500 finally crossed the threshold to make gains year to date, recovering fully from year to date losses. Still hasn't gotten back to the level that we saw, the high for the year, but now we're looking at drops. Dow Jones mini futures down about 1%, S&P 500 futures down 0.8%, and NASDAQ futures. By the way, the NASDAQ is up 10% year to date. Yeah. NASDAQ futures are off by about 0.5%.
But still lagging the big jump in terms of the S&P 500. Also, I note that some of the big European names, Matt, that are perhaps going to benefit from this aerospace industry package, Airbus, also Thales and Safran, actually are some of the big losers in terms of their share price this morning. So Airbus is down by 7.3% right now, Safran 3.4%, Thales down by 3.8%. So yeah, this as we're expecting to hear from Bruno Le Maire about it.
It is a big story. I mean, France earmark. We've had these stimulus stories from individual countries for individual industries. We now see France earmarking $17 billion for its aerospace industry. That package includes export guarantees. It includes credit relief for some new aircraft owners, as well as an extension of part-time work subsidies. And as I was saying earlier, one French official said the A380 is an old plane. Mm-hmm. I felt like that was new. Doesn't the A380 feel like a new plane to you?
I must admit, I'm not sure that I'm the sort of passenger that checks exactly which aircraft model I'm going on, but I know that you are.
Yeah, I look, and it's a big wide body, but the thing is, it's only it only came out in 2005, and as I was noting earlier, back then Porsche was still manufacturing a 996. That's 4 generations back in terms of the 911. I guess the A380's done.
Well, it depends on the yardstick that you use, doesn't it, to measure things. Great. Thank you for that little look at the markets. Let's also talk about a big UK story, shall we? More protests are planned for London to coincide with the funeral of George Floyd in the United States. Boris Johnson has said that the killing awakened an incontrovertible, undeniable feeling of injustice worldwide, telling protesters, quote, "I hear you," through a message yesterday. But the government has also faced heavy criticism for not addressing the much higher rate of deaths for BAME people from COVID-19 here in the UK. Joining us this morning is Eric Collins, who is the CEO of Impact X, a black-led venture capital fund targeting funding of £100 million to invest in underrepresented entrepreneurs. A warm welcome to the programme, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, I'm interested, as the UK is trying to emerge from pandemic, something that has hit BAME communities so much harder. What should the government be doing to help black businesses in Britain to recover from the pandemic?
First of all, thank you for having me, Caroline and Matt. It's good to be on the program. Well, Impact X was started back in 2018, before any of these sort of issues were on the table of, increased mortality and disproportionate mortality of black individuals and BAME individuals in the UK, as well as what we are focused on is sort of the potential higher impact of mortality and disproportionate effects of COVID-19 on black businesses. Those businesses are already suffering from less investment of capital from organizations like ours. Venture capital companies are really not putting that much money into organizations, which makes them much more vulnerable during times like these. And organizations like Impact X is interested in working with government, interested in working with other venture capital companies in order to make sure that what happens is that there is enough capital going to underrepresented entrepreneurs so that they can actually do what they'd like to do, and that's build big, strong businesses, those that are able to employ and create jobs, and those that are able to create pedigree for their employees who can go on to do other things. And we think that that's actually part of a solution for many things, that it's part of a virtuous circle, the creation of strong businesses run by underrepresented entrepreneurs.
We had a video message on Monday evening, Eric, by Boris Johnson calling the feelings of injustice at the heart of the Black Lives Matter movement as the cold reality. Is that changing in the UK at all?
It's an interesting question, Matt. Is it changing, and what are we seeing? So from our vantage point as a venture capital company, are we seeing that there is a lot of resource going to underrepresented entrepreneurs? We see that 30 years ago when I got into venture capital in the United States on the other side of the ocean before I came to the UK back in 2014, less than 1% of venture capital went to underrepresented entrepreneurs who are black, and less than 4% went to underrepresented entrepreneurs who were fully female-led teams. Those numbers haven't changed in 30 years. So my statement is that it looks as though there hasn't been a lot of impact of government policy and private industry impacts on those numbers, which is very sad, and why an organization like Impact X has to come and can't sort of spend any more time polishing up the problem that there is this inequity in terms of an inefficiency in terms of investment capital. We've got to put money into these companies and get them moving, and that's what we're doing.
And your and the pitch is that the upside for investing in these businesses is enormous, and it's massive untapped potential.
I agree with you, Caroline, that quite frankly what we note is that underrepresented entrepreneurs tend to over-index in terms of hiring underrepresented individuals. And those underrepresented individuals then have opportunity to work in some of the most interesting, exciting companies in the world. Hopefully what we're investing in is the next Amazon. Hopefully what we're investing in is the next Airbnb that's started by an underrepresented individual. If those individuals who are then being hired into those organizations can get the experience, they can take that experience either and grow in the organization. As it grows, they can go onto another organization, they can join a Google, they can join, the Bank of England, whatever they'd like to do, or they might start their own businesses. Eventually someone exits and there's a release of capital. And that release of capital, which we see all over the world, when organizations go public, if being in part held by these underrepresented entrepreneurs in the communities that they build, then leads to a very big amplification of the impacts of any money that we could put into an organization or any money that any other venture capital firm could put into an organization. But at the moment, basically Impact X out there who's been focusing on this issue and a few others of underrepresented entrepreneurs not having enough venture capital throughout Europe. And therefore, it's still a challenge, and we call on others to join us in thinking about this particular demographic.
There is empirical evidence that a diversity of, with diversity in terms of ethnicity, you are then able to do a better job of marketing, reach a broader group of consumers, basically make more money. Doesn't that make it, an obvious pitch or an easy pitch to raise funds, or is it still difficult, Eric?
In my part of the world, what you're doing, Matt, is called preaching to the choir. So you're preaching to the choir, and I would say, I agree with you wholeheartedly. That evidence has been out for a long period of time. And it is interesting in moments like this that what we often are focusing on is issues that are sometimes termed diversity and inclusion. We focus on those as secondary, not things which are primarily responsible for being able to help us to adapt to easily evolve, to pivot effectively during times of crisis as well as times of opportunity. Often organizations, and I don't know where this comes from, whether it comes from who are the backers of them financially, who are leading those organizations, what are the power structures that exist, but often those people don't seem to be focused on that as a solution or as an accelerant, but sometimes as a secondary thing which happens later. What I sometimes get distressed with is this idea that if we have a different sort of a person who's leading an organization, such as we have a young black woman of 28 who's saying that I have a new way of scoring credit, that we're saying sometimes that person might not be able to be listened to because people feel that that wouldn't be the individual who would be presenting that sort of an idea, and that we're missing out then on opportunities to actually improve the world and create some fantastic businesses here in Europe that could then actually impact the world in very, very positive ways. But my belief, and Impact X belief, is exactly what you said, Matt, that it is this underrepresented group that is really reflective of the future of the world, the future of decision-making, the future of consumption.
Eric Collins, thank you so much for joining us, CEO of Impact X. You go on to TV next, so TV Go on your terminal for more. This is Bloomberg.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success, because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
What's the bottom line? That answer may be uncomfortably uncertain these days. But corporate leaders facing pressure on profitability know one thing for sure. GEP can help. GEP's unified procurement and supply chain solutions help reduce costs, improve performance, and boost EBITDA, helping great companies stay on track and primed for the next phase of the business cycle. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
What's the true value? Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
A squirt for you, a squeeze for me, a splodge for the kids, and that makes 3. A splat coming in, a splot going out. A safe pair of hands is what it's about. A squirt for you. When you're out and about, keep Carex antibacterial hand sanitizer on hand. With 70% alcohol to kill viruses and 99.99% of bacteria, every squirt means you're in safe hands, helping to keep you safe and protected. That's why we Carex. Always read the label and use sanitizer safely. Find out more at carex.co.uk.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn. Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Kill O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carabas cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2013, Rafael Nadal wins another French Open title, making him the first man to win the same Grand Slam title 8 times. To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Use 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Horder with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. It's a risk-off day today after yesterday's historic rally when the S&P 500 traded positive on the year. We have European equities firmly in the red. CAC Iran down 2%. DAX, IBEX, and the FTSE MIB all down more than 2% this morning. The Stock 600, the benchmark index, down 1 3/10%. Banking sector down more than 4.5% this morning, as well as autos and travel leisure under immense pressure, down more than 3% as well. And then in New York, U.S. futures are pointing to a lower start. S&P 500 down 0.9%. We are seeing a stronger Bloomberg dollar index this morning, up 0.4%. The first time in 9 days that we actually see it strengthening. And of course, this comes as that drop was one of the biggest we've seen in nearly a decade for the dollar index. We're waiting for the Fed tomorrow. That's going to be the main driver for these markets, their policy decision. And this morning, we also see some money going into treasuries with the yield down 6 basis points, 0.81%. As a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash, now here's Leanne Garrins with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will talk his cabinet through plans for easing lockdown restrictions. That's as the nation reported the lowest number of daily deaths since the measures were imposed, with London reporting no new fatalities. The UK is still on schedule to reopen non-essential retailers on the 15th of June. Now, over in the US, Democrats are proposing a sweeping police reform bill. They're hoping to turn the energy from nationwide unrest to concrete legal changes. One key change is they want to make it easier to prosecute and sue law enforcement officers. A vote is planned in the House for later this month. And finally, in the Netherlands, Amsterdam's planning to clean up its sex and drugs tourism in a reboot. This comes after the coronavirus pandemic raged in March and April, turning it into a ghost town. The mayor has laid out plans for locals to reclaim the city. It includes buying property and limiting permits to ensure that the old city is not filled world with just cannabis coffee shops and sex workers. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Leanne, I think that's a fascinating story. Obviously, it gets a lot of attention because when you put the words sex and or drugs in a headline, everyone reads it. But it's really a story about the best kind of gentrification, right? Because the center of Amsterdam is packed with these sort of cheap tourist trinket shops and whatever the cheap tourist trinket shop version is of brothels and coffee houses. So if they can move those to the outside and let the locals come in and build, decent restaurants that don't have pictures in the menu and shops that you and I might actually want to go to, it just improves the quality of life, I think, for everybody.
Well, it's a really interesting article, and like you said, it is gentrification. But what's also more interesting is 1 million tourists visit the city on average every single month. That's even more than the population that live there. So that's something massive. And it's really interesting. Like you said, they're looking to move, the red light district, which is of course famous within Amsterdam. We all go there to see it. I know I did. And the very popular coffee shops out of the city. So people just have a bit more of a normal life, people living in that city. Because I guess we forget when we go there, because we're all on the roller coaster journey that Amsterdam offers, that people are actually living there.
Well, and I also found the red light district quite boring, to be honest. I was so excited to see this sort of, Pinocchio's playground kind of thing, and it just didn't really meet up to my expectations. Let's get over to Nathan Hager right now. He's prepping for Daybreak U.S. and the Americas. And have you been, Nathan? Are you...
I've
never been to Amsterdam.
I've yet to experience the red light district in Amsterdam.
It's not what it's...
Not all it's cracked up to be.
No, exactly. Yeah. In any case, what have you got? I'm sure your show is going to be all it's cracked up to be.
Well, it's we're definitely not in any sort of red light district in terms of markets being in the red right now, other than the futures pulling back this morning. But my goodness, what an amazing few months this has been. After the fastest plunge into a technical bear market, Wall Street is already back in positive territory on the year. Now it's raising the question, were we ever really in a bear market? And where does this rally go from here? Is it at risk of getting overextended? We're going to get the view this morning of Andrew Sheets from Morgan Stanley and Ryan Dietrich at LPL Financial on just where this mind-boggling market goes from here. All this as the Fed begins its June meeting. We're going to have a preview of that. And the World Bank coming out with a new warning on emerging markets. Of course, the equity markets and the actual economy haven't exactly been seeing eye to Daybreak. Matt?
I got to say, I remember the days of the great financial crisis. John Tucker would check his 401k statement on air, and it was sometimes tear-jerking.
Yeah.
But now he's going to be relieved that the S&P is back.
I mean, you got to wonder if the rug's going to get pulled out, though, right? I mean, it's just...
Well, listen, I know that Europeans don't have money market funds in the same way that Americans do. But having said that, the people are focused on it. I've had plenty of questions from, the generation older than me about what's going on with their retirement income.
Yeah, if you're getting close to retirement, and I don't know how old John Tucker is. He's youthful, but it'd be interesting to see his reaction. Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow coming up next.
Guys.
Maybe JT will make an appearance. If you're listening on Sirius XM, if you're listening on London DAB, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Well, should we talk a bit about that pessimism then? About the flip side, to the S&P rally is the warning issued by the World Bank, the dire forecast saying that actually the global economy will contract the most since World War II this year. Global GDP could shrink by 5.2% in 2020. Well, our next guest also is forecasting a major hit to global growth. I mean, who isn't? But actually suggesting that we're already past the trough. Banu Baweja joins us, Chief Strategist at UBS. You're forecasting not quite such a huge plunge, 3.9% though for global GDP. Is the World Bank being too negative? What about markets? Why are they ignoring all of this?
Yeah, the markets are looking through this as though this was only an income statement shock. It's not likely to have balance sheet repercussions, and that's what the market thinks. Look, we're a little more optimistic than the World Bank only because lockdowns have gone, or the reopening of the lockdowns has gone slightly better than expected. But given that this is such a large move away from the long-term mean, let me remind you the long-term mean of global growth is about 3.5%. We're about 7 standard deviations away, and I think the World Bank is a little more than 8 standard deviations away from that long-term mean. So I don't think there's much in it, especially when there's so much uncertainty. Of course, the Fed didn't have a summary of economic projections in March because there was so much uncertainty. This question of whether the market is extended, I mean, I certainly think it is, and that the only reason why the market is here is because of this equity risk premium question. What are you going to do with your money at zero rates? And that's why all this money keeps going into that. That is an important question, but now with 530s in the U.S. curves steepening, now with curves, the backing yields backing up a little bit, I think it's a little bit difficult to argue that equities give you much better risk-adjusted return than does credit, for instance. So we wouldn't be chasing the market out here. There's a lot to be said for the S&P in terms of its sectors, not necessarily in terms of the economy, in terms of the sectors that have come off with flying colors, tech, for instance. But it's very difficult to argue that the market is not fully valued here.
So what do you like then, Banu? If you had money to put to work here, where would you put it?
So look, I mean, I think IG credit makes a lot of sense. It has tightened quite a lot, but I think that's one place, especially with the backup in yields here. I think taking IG credit along with yields makes sense. The other question, of course, is the question of where do you put it in the equity market? And that question has to be, you have to buy cyclicality without buying value. And that question really is, I think you have to go to markets like Germany, you have to go to markets like Korea, you have to go to markets like Australia. What I don't want to do is to extend myself too far into the commodity sector or deep into industrials, because we're not looking for a major shift away from growth towards value. So some selected cyclicals, but in general, I think the equity market has rallied quite a lot already.
Yeah, it has. What do you expect to hear from Powell on Wednesday? Will that change anything, or indeed how quickly the ECB Europe rather manages to implement changes?
We do think that the yield curve control will last up to about 3 years. I think they're going to announce that. And I don't think that there will be a material change in QE. I think they will make the QE open-ended. It's very possible that they go for 50 billion in treasuries and 50 billion in mortgage-backed securities. It's a small risk that disappoints some people, but the Fed, of course, is extremely flexible. So even if there's a little bit of disappointment and that leads to a tightening of financial conditions, the Fed will react quite promptly. So it may disappoint some of the biggest doves, but again, I would emphasize that it's going to be open-ended commitment. So the Fed is going to keep yields fairly low. It's going to keep financial conditions as they do.
Banu, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg Radio. Banu Baweja, who is Chief Strategist at UBS. Don't forget, 1:15 today, Matt, UK time, the International Trade Secretary, Liz Truss, will be joining us. So listen out for that interview if you are a UK listener. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents...
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't, and I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones, and you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life.
You could get £26,000 tax-free to train as a teacher. Subject to eligibility, selected subjects only. Search Get Into Teaching.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
On the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The S&P 500 erases losses for the year, capping a 47% gain since its March low.
New York continues its push to reopen as coronavirus infections hit the lowest level since the pandemic began.
And the Fed meets in Washington to assess the path forward for a strong recovery.
A grand jury will investigate the shooting death of Maurice Gordon in New Jersey as the family of George Floyd prepares their final goodbye. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The baseball owners have made a new pitch to the players, and new names have surfaced as potential buyers of the Mets.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
And U.S. futures are falling this morning after the S&P 500 inched into the green for the year. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 30 points this morning. Dow futures down 318. NASDAQ futures down 55. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%. CAC in Paris down 2%. FTSE 100 down 1.8%. Nikkei 225 in Japan fell 0.4%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 16/30 seconds, yield 0.82%. The yield on the 2-year, 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil's down 2.1% on 81 cents at $37.39 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1/3%, up $5.90 at $17.11.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1263 against the dollar. The yen 107.91. Nathan.
Karen, you said it. Just 53 days after bottoming out, the S&P 500 has gone into the green for the year. We are coming off the 9th rally in 11 sessions, capping a 47% gain since the March 23rd low. Esty Dweck is head of global macro strategy at Natixis Investment Managers.
A lot of these extreme moves have become shorter and shorter, both on the way down and on the way back up. I think everything seems to be priced almost to perfection, so we don't like to chase this rally. At some point, especially now that finally sentiment is turning much more bullish and the rally is broadening, there is this question of disappointment risks.
After yesterday's close, the S&P 500 is now just 5% away from a record high, though U.S. futures point to a lower open.
The rally comes as Americans across the country get back to work. New York City started reopening its doors exactly 100 days after the state's first case of COVID-19. Now, Governor Andrew Cuomo says infections are at the lowest level since the pandemic began.
We went from the worst situation in the nation, frankly, one of the worst situations on the globe, to not only flattening the curve, but to bending the curve.
Now, the question is, when will the city enter phase 2? We spoke with former Lieutenant Governor Dick Ravitch, who's part of New York City's task force to restart the economy.
To be honest with you, I don't think anybody knows. One is guessing about human nature. I think the protests are not a disincentive. I think the occasional violence that accompanies some of these protests is a major, major disincentive. And of course, The biggest question is employment. How many people are going to come away from this experience deciding, hey, we don't need a fancy office in downtown Manhattan. We can work from home.
And when it comes to retail, the industry is poised to be one of the hardest hit from the virus. According to Coreside Research, as many as 25,000 U.S. stores could close permanently because of the pandemic.
That is one of many reasons the Federal Reserve is doing everything it can to prop up the economy. And now the central bank is expanding terms for its program to lend to small and mid-sized businesses. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It's a bid to reach more firms hit by the coronavirus-driven economic shock. The Fed lowered the minimum loan amount and raised the maximum loan limit under its Main Street lending program. It also extended loan terms to 5 years from 4 years and will allow businesses to defer principal payments for the first 2 years of the loan instead of just the first year. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. The Fed also kicks off its two-day policy meeting in Washington today. We get details on that from Bloomberg economics correspondent Michael McKee.
This will be a meeting for Fed officials to take stock rather than taking action. The policymakers will try to assess what the better-than-expected May jobs figures mean. Will the recession be shorter? Does the report have any implications for the speed of recovery? The answers will weigh on decisions yet to come on any next policy steps. Fed officials will also be offering their first economic forecast since January, and the dot plot returns, although no rate moves are seen over the next few years. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Michael, speaking of forecasts, the World Bank is out with a grim one on emerging markets. The organization says for the first time since 1960, emerging economies will shrink this year. Bloomberg's Michelle Jamrisco has more.
The EMs will just disproportionately face these challenges amid the virus outbreak and the efforts to contain it. They have limited healthcare systems compared to DMs, of course, a deeply integrated supply chain, so they're much more vulnerable in relation to the global trade downturn, and they depend on a lot of foreign financing, so they'll continue to kind of struggle to keep a risk-on mode and attract those foreign investors and keep financial systems stable.
The world sees global growth contracting more than 5% this year, while emerging and developing economies shrink 2.5%. The organization predicts only 10% of countries will avoid contraction.
Still, an equity rally in Asia shows no signs of slowing. Stocks in the region posted gains overnight for a 7th straight session. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with the details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Karen. Australia's ASX 200 was one of the strongest performers in the region, playing catch-up after Monday's holiday to close higher in Sydney by 2.4%. The CSI 300 was up 0.6%. South Korea's Kospi and Taiwan's TAIEX both edging higher by around 0.25%. In Hong Kong, property stocks lifted the Hang Seng towards its highest close in nearly 3 months, and the Nikkei 225 bucked the upward regional trend, closing lower by 0.4% in Tokyo as the yen advanced against the dollar and as data showed Japan's machine tool orders more than halved in May in the latest sign of the pandemic's impact on the country's factories. In Singapore, Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. And futures are lower this morning. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 5:07 on Wall Street. Now let's bring in Amy Morris for a check of what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Amy.
Morning, Nathan. A vigil in Houston last night for George Floyd. George's brother, Philance, says activism cannot end with his brother's funeral.
We have good police, but we have bad police. Amen. You can't sort them out, so we got to figure it out right now. All right. So, right now, I want everybody to start voting, going to council meetings and everything.
Floyd's burial is set for today in Houston. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy announced a grand jury will investigate the shooting death of an unarmed black man by a state trooper on May 23rd. That was 2 days before Floyd was killed. Murphy says the state attorney general will release the dash cam footage of the police shooting death of Maurice Gordon on Memorial Day weekend. He also had a message for protesters worried they might have been exposed to the coronavirus.
And to everyone who took to their streets and town centers, please go out and get tested for COVID-19. We cannot let what happened across New Jersey this weekend be undone by an outbreak.
The New York legislature is expected to pass a criminal justice bill this week that would ban police chokeholds and allow the release of police disciplinary records. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio credited the curfew and police tactics with keeping the city calm. Police arrested 2,500 people in the past 10 days, but none on Sunday. In Washington, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and other top Democrats knelt for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence to honor Floyd before they presented a sweeping police reform bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell outright rejected any call to defund police departments.
They also know that well-trained law enforcement officers are an important part of creating safe communities, not something to defund or abolish.
Key Democrats, including presumptive presidential nominee Joe Biden, are distancing themselves from the defund push, which some supporters say is a symbolic commitment to end systemic racism and shift policing priorities rather than an actual plan to eliminate law enforcement agencies. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashauer.
All right, good morning, Nathan. Another volley in the back and forth between the baseball owners and players. This time an offer from the management side, upping the amount of games to be played to 76, also upping the percentage of prorated pay to 75, but the union wants 100%. More games. MLB has asked for a response by tomorrow. It is expected to be another no. And another issue has perhaps arisen. Baseball wants players to sign an acknowledgement of risk waiver. There's no deal. MLB has the right to implement the schedule they want, perhaps only 48 games, but the players can always choose to simply not play. Any way you look at it, right now, bad situation for the living baseball in 2020. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reports new names as potential buyers of the Mets. Joshua Harris and David Blitzer come from Wall Street. They don't have quite the marquee value of Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez, who are said to also be interested, but Harris already owns the Devils and Philadelphia 76ers. The talk said to be in the early stages. The Wilpons' $2.6 billion deal with Steve Cohen fell through in December, but there are no longer said to be conditions put in over when a new owner would retain control of the team. From tennis, Novak Djokovic says the U.S. Open, late August, early September in New York, should not be played. Not with the conditions that have been laid out, like players having to stay not in Manhattan but at airport hotels, and they can only bring one person in with them. Djokovic says he needs his fitness trainer and his physical therapist. Rafael Nadal recently said he's worried more about health and safety. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, maybe this is the next best thing to being there. English soccer club Brighton is offering its fans the chance to have cardboard cutouts of themselves in the stadium when the Premier League resumes, but it will come at a cost. Fans will need to send in a photo of themselves wearing a Brighton jersey and pay $25. Games in the Premier League are closed to spectators for the soon-to-resume season due to the coronavirus pandemic. Futures pointing to a lower open after coming back for the year. S&P futures down 32 points. Dow futures down 326. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
For the Jewish Communal Fund,
Day one. It's not day one of work. It starts way before that. It's day one of having the belief you can get there. It's knowing that even though it's been hard, you're ready for what's to come. Start your day one with Barclays Life Skills and join the 10 million we've helped so far. Barclays, make money work for you. 10 million life skills figure independently assured within our 2019 ESG report.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing, so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Here's Rishad Salamat.
Multiplex owners in India have been hit by plunging revenues due to the coronavirus lockdown. One such player is PVR. It's actually the company which pioneered the multiplex revolution in the country. Just bring in Chairman and MD Ajay Bijli. How bad are things there at the moment? Is it a short-term hit, or does it actually change the structural nature of cinema going in any way?
I think structural change, I don't think will happen, but of course it's a huge, extraordinary event that has happened in the last 100 years, as everybody's become very familiar with history now. Nothing like this has ever happened before. But I think definitely if we are closed for a long time and that there is so much skepticism in people to go out of their homes once the lockdown does open, I think it's going to be a slow burn. We were the first ones to have been asked to lock down, and we'll be the last ones, unfortunately, to be asked to open up. So I think it's going to be a slow burn, people coming out, new movies getting released. There's going to be a tentativeness. But, everybody, all establishments, whether your hotels, restaurants, airlines, all are taking safety measures. We'll be taking global standard safety measures to make our customers and guests feel safe and secure. But I do feel that it's going to take time before the industry picks up.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks and U.S. stock index futures are dropping as momentum in risk assets stalls after a historic rally. Treasuries are advancing. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 32 points. Dow futures down 329. NASDAQ futures down 60. The DAX in Germany is down 2.2%. 10-year Treasury up 17/30 seconds, yield 0.81%. The yield on the 2-year higher 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.4% on 92 cents at $37.27 a barrel. COMEX gold is 0.6% or $9.90 at $17.15 an ounce. The euro 1.1257 against the dollar. British pound 1.2636 and the yen is at 107.85. We had a few headlines crossing the Bloomberg this morning. Euro area first quarter GDP shrinking by a revised 3.6%. That compares to a previous estimate of a 3.8% drop. And S&P Global Ratings revising the outlook on Japan's rating to stable from positive. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy, good morning.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning to you. President Trump says he will discuss ideas for revamping police tactics in response to the protests over the killing of George Floyd, but he provided no specific changes. Attorney General William Barr tells Fox News the U.S. Secret Service told the president to go to that secure part of the White House as large protests unfolded outside. That contradicts the president's account of what happened. A federal appeals court has tossed out 3 lawsuits challenging President Trump's ban on travelers from predominantly Muslim countries. The ruling is a victory for the Trump administration in its years-long defense of that ban. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and we're joined now by Andrew Sheets, Chief Cross-Asset Strategist at Morgan Stanley. Great to talk with you this morning, Andrew. And what a remarkable few months this has been, coming after the fastest plunge into a technical bear market that we've seen in recent memory. Now back to where we started from at the beginning of this year. What do you make of how this market is behaving right now?
Well, good morning and nice to be with you. So in some ways, as you mentioned, it's incredibly remarkable, right? The fastest plunge, the fastest recovery that we've seen. But I think in other ways, I think this cycle has actually been a lot more normal than it's appreciated. That a lot of the conditions that preceded it were relatively normal. The yield curve inverted, labor markets were tight, the Fed had tightened. You had a number of those usual kind of late cycle patterns. The way the market bottomed relative to where Morgan Stanley thinks the data bottomed was actually quite normal, was very much in line with prior recessions. And some of the recent price performance has been very consistent with that early cycle playbook. So as unusual as things seem, I actually think what investors should be keeping in mind is that a lot of the kind of the early cycle, normal early cycle playbook is still applying, and we think that will continue.
So does that imply that you don't think that we were in a bear market when that loss, that March 23rd low, happened?
So we certainly were, but I think what's also really important to think about is that the market for some time before that, even before COVID-19 hit, was trading in a very typical normal late cycle way, that defensive stocks were outperforming cyclical stocks, the yields were generally falling, the yield curve had inverted. You had a lot of kind of very defensive late cycle characteristics to the market, and so the recession that we've had ended that cycle, we think, and has started a new one. And so I think that's very important for how we're thinking about the market and how we're thinking about kind of what works on a relative basis going forward.
So what do you advise your clients if we are indeed in a new early cycle?
Well, I think the early part of the cycle is generally quite good for falling volatility and strategies that benefit from it, and I think that can continue. I think it supports credit markets in a lot of different forms, from corporate credit to securitized credit to emerging markets. We think it supports higher yields and steeper yield curves and higher inflation expectations, all of which are still very depressed. All of that would be a very typical kind of early cycle playbook.
Of course, what hasn't been typical in the response to this crisis has been this extraordinary support we've gotten from the Federal Reserve. They're beginning their June meeting this morning. What are you expecting to see from the Fed going forward here, given the huge amount of support that it's given this market?
Well, Well, I think that's a great point. The Fed response has also been, unprecedented, just like the scale of the drop in activity has been. And I think for the moment, the incentives for the Fed and the European Central Bank are to remain very dovish, to err on the side of caution. You don't know if there will be a second or a third wave of the virus. You don't know how long the economic impact will be, so it makes sense to remain extremely accommodative. I don't think the Fed is going to push back as much on yields rising in the longer end as maybe the market expects. That's okay. That's a sign of normalization. But I do think that the Fed will continue to keep front end rates, we think, very easy for a long period of time, and that we think can kind of help support a steepening of the yield curve.
Almost sounds like you're talking about yield curve control without explicitly calling it yield curve control. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I actually think it's not so much in that the Fed will actually allow longer end yields to rise, that would be normal, that would be fine, that would be consistent with what we've seen in a lot of periods of heavy central bank intervention. In QE1, QE2, QE3, you saw periods where 10-year or 30-year rates rose during those periods, even as the Fed was buying securities. So we don't think that yield curve control is our base case. It's certainly possible, but especially if the economic data continues to improve, especially if financial conditions in other markets, such as stocks and credit, continue to improve, then we don't think it might be necessary for the Fed to go down that path.
All right. Thanks for this, Andrew. Always good getting your insights. Really appreciate it. Andrew Sheets is Chief Cross-Asset Strategist at Morgan Stanley. Of course, the Fed's two-day June meeting begins today. We're going to have full coverage once the decision is made tomorrow. 2 p.m. Wall Street time, followed by Chairman Powell's news conference. We will have full coverage for you here on Bloomberg Radio. In the meantime, futures pulling back after hitting the level for the start of the year for the S&P 500. S&P futures down 29 points right now. Dow futures lower by 303 points. NASDAQ futures down 53. Stay with us. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Risk is off the table this morning with the U.S. stock futures pointing to a lower open, but the market is showing gains for the year after yesterday's Wall Street session. The S&P 500 reversed its losses for 2020, rising 38 points yesterday, or just over 1% to 3232, as states take steps toward reopening from pandemic-related shutdowns. The NASDAQ rose about 1% to 9925, setting a new record. The Dow surged 461 points to 27,572, but is still negative year to date. The Fed starts a two-day meeting today, and investors will be paying attention to see what, if anything, policymakers will do next to continue to support the economy. WeWork is exploring ending its push into communal living. Bloomberg has learned that the New York-based office-sharing company is working with an advisor and holding talks about handing over its operations of its We Live location near Washington, D.C., and it's also deliberating options for its second location on Wall Street. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
Or visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers...
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Emma, the
UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Dear Dad, Happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Rolls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
Rise to the 5! Touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Just 53 days after bottoming out, the S&P 500 inched into the green for the year. We're coming off the 9th rally in 11 sessions, capping a 47% gain since the March 23rd low. Here with more, Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Easing lockdowns are bolstering economic optimism, and the S&P 500 index is now up in the year-to-date column by less than 0.1%. The rally comes as many parts of the country emerge from the shutdowns that brought the world's largest economy to a standstill amid the coronavirus pandemic. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Among those cities reopening, New York, it began to resume activity exactly 100 days after the state's first case of COVID-19. And now Governor Andrew Cuomo says infections are at the lowest level since the pandemic began.
Why are we reopening? Because these numbers say we can. It's no guess. There's no ideology. Based on the numbers, we can reopen.
Still, there are challenges ahead. We spoke with former Lieutenant Governor Dick Ravitch, who's part of New York City's task force to restart the economy.
There are estimates that hundreds of thousands of people are going to leave New York because of the ease with which the virus spreads and the congestion and the disabilities of that congestion.
There's also concern for the city's retail sector. According to Coresight research, as many as 25,000 U.S. stores could close permanently because of the pandemic.
Friday's rebound in U.S. hiring has lawmakers tapping the brakes on stimulus. Last month's surprise job gains are leading some Republicans to question the need for more action. Today, senators discuss whether to extend jobless benefits due to expire next month.
Also in Washington, the Federal Reserve kicks off its 2-day policy meeting. No action is expected from policymakers, but we get their first economic forecast since January. The central bank also issues its dot plot, though no move on rates is predicted anytime soon.
And again, futures are lower this morning. S&P futures are down 26 points. Dow futures down 254. NASDAQ futures down 46. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany is down 1.6%. 10-year Treasury up 15.30 seconds, yield 0.82%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 2% at $37.42 a barrel. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 5:33 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris is here with more on what's going on around the world. Amy?
Thanks, Nathan. Good morning to you. A vigil was held outside Jack Yates High School in Houston, Texas last night. This is in memory of their alumnus, George Floyd. Floyd's brother, Philanese, was overwhelmed with the turnout and his brother's impact.
Y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but y'all here with us right now. And this is a blessing. Yeah. And this is bigger than George right now. Yeah. We finna stop everybody from being afraid of the police. Yeah.
Floyd's burial is set for later today. In New Jersey, a grand jury will investigate the shooting death of Maurice Gordon by a state trooper on Memorial Day weekend. This was 2 days before Floyd was killed. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says the state attorney general will release dash cam footage.
And I offer condolences to the families of every person who has died during a law enforcement encounter. Police have a responsibility to protect the people they serve, and that demands a high level of accountability when things go wrong.
Murphy says his state is committed to transparency in all investigations. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio says after 2,500 people were arrested during 10 days of protests, no arrests were made on Sunday. He credits the curfew and police tactics. New York lawmakers are poised now to overhaul a decades-old law protecting police disciplinary records. Police unions say releasing those records could jeopardize officers' safety. Governor Andrew Cuomo says he will sign that bill. Calls to defund the police in the wake of protests over the death of George Floyd in police custody are growing louder, but might not get far on Capitol Hill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell outright rejected the idea.
I'm all for social work and mental health, but call me old-fashioned. I think you may actually want a police officer to stop a criminal.
The Democrats' proposal would divert some police funding toward social and mental health programs. Key Democrats, including presumptive presidential nominee Joe Biden, are distancing themselves from the defund push, which supporters say is actually a move to shift policing priorities. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
All right, Nathan. The hope was for there to be baseball played on the 4th of July. Great way to celebrate. And right about now, players would pick up where they left off back in March with a resumption of spring training. Obviously, those scenarios are not going to happen because of the labor dispute over what the players' pay would be in a shortened season without fans. The clock is ticking. Every offer from one side seems to be met by a resounding no from the other. The owner's pitch made yesterday called for 76 games, with players getting 75% of their prorated salaries. The initial union response was reportedly to scoff at that. The Mets are still for sale. The Wilpons deal with Steve Cohen fell through last December. Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez said to be still interested, but Bloomberg reports 2 new names, both from Wall Street, have surfaced. Joshua Harris from Apollo Global and David Blitzer from Blackstone looking to be partners on a deal. Talks said to be still in the early stages. College football players are having unofficial voluntary workouts and some early indications of concern that contact football might lead to positive coronavirus tests. We heard last week about 5 such tests at Alabama and now 3 at Bama's arch rival Auburn. A statement put out recently by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell that the league supported Black Lives Matter stopped short of mentioning Colin Kaepernick, ex-49er quarterback. His kneeling during the national anthem back in 2016, of course, began the controversy. No team has signed him since. Kaepernick's former teammate Carlos Hyde, now with Seattle, says if Goodell and the NFL are sincere, someone would sign Kaepernick. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Okay, John, thank you. It's 5:37 on Wall Street and time for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
Well, after months of being closed because of the coronavirus, some retail locations in New York opened Monday, allowing shoppers to pick up orders. But several of the national chains, including Macy's, are waiting
Tiffany will wait at least another few days before serving shoppers at its Fifth Avenue store. New York City's hotel tax revenue is projected to fall to $37.6 million in the quarter ending June 30th. That's a decline of about 80% for the last 3 months of 2019. Recovery in the hospitality sector and related tax revenue is expected to be very slow. When New Jersey Natural Gas said Monday it'll work with Google Nest and Energy Federation to provide a Google Nest Thermostat E at no cost to its nearly 500,000 residential customers. According to Google, Nest Thermostat E users save an average of 15% on cooling costs and up to 12% on heating. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
Okay, Ed, thank you. It's 5:38 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on WHAS in Louisville. Wendy's says the beef supply has returned to near normal levels.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting Miami restaurant owners say the city's 9 p.m. curfew is hurting their business.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the dive in UK consumer spending during the lockdown.
I'm Ed Corey on KFBK in Sacramento. I'm reporting PG&E will sell its downtown San Francisco headquarters.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. 5:39 on Wall Street, and coming up today, we get a look at performance in the luxury sector. Tiffany & Company reports earnings before the open of U.S. trading. And here with a preview is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
The coronavirus pandemic is expected to weigh heavily on Tiffany's results. Analysts surveyed by Bloomberg are forecasting a 39% revenue drop. It's expected to post a loss of about 27 cents a share. The pandemic has also cast a shadow over the planned takeover of Tiffany by LVMH. Directors of the French company discussed the deal last week amid reports that it may need to be reworked. Tiffany reportedly is unwilling to renegotiate the $16 billion deal and has said it will sue if LVMH proposes a cut. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Okay, Larry, thank you. Now, some other stories we're following. Shares of Chesapeake Energy are plunging in early trading, down more than 44%. The oil and gas company is preparing a potential bankruptcy filing. Bloomberg News has learned the move could result in control being handed over to its senior lenders. And auto sales platform Vroom priced shares above the marketed range, raised $468 million in its IPO. Company's backers include T. Rowe Price and General Catalyst Partners. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with the cover on racial repression in the U.S. economy. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube. Weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. This is Bloomberg.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Oculomotor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. Kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Dear Dad, happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, George Floyd remembered. I'm Christopher Cruz. The black man whose death inspired protests worldwide over racial injustice will be laid to rest near Houston today. George Floyd was 46 when he died 2 weeks ago. He'll be buried next to his mother. He was remembered by thousands of friends, family, and strangers yesterday.
In a line circling Fountain of Praise Church, a diverse crowd in race, gender, and age. This woman knew Floyd personally.
He was a good friend, and I just wanted to show my respect to the family.
And this man drove to the viewing from Austin because he felt it was something he had to do.
It just was, it just was.
Others from the West Coast, as the viewing marks the closest memorial to get to.
Well, I'm from Los Angeles, affecting the whole country.
Different backgrounds, but a unified message, a need for reform in policing. Clayton Neville, Houston.
Joe Biden met with members of Floyd's family yesterday. He'll speak during today's service. I'm Christopher Cruz.
It's a new disease making an unprecedented impact.
The job losses were widespread.
It is a stunningly historic moment.
Your best strategy?
Is this a market that's accepted reality?
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and this update brought to you by SEI. With an operating platform designed to support all major asset classes, diverse strategies, and investment vehicles, SEI is redefining wealth management. Learn more at SEIC.com/IMS. European stocks and U.S. stock index futures are dropping as momentum in risk assets stalls after a historic rally. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 30 points, Dow futures down 301, NASDAQ futures down 51. The DAX in Germany is down 1.7%. 10-year Treasury up 16/30 seconds, yield 0.82%, yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.3%, down 89 cents at $37.29 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.5% or $8.60 at $17.1370 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1267 against the dollar, British pound 1.2637, and the yen 107.89. And today we are watching for the JOLTS jobs report at 10 o'clock Wall Street time, along with wholesale inventories. And in about 12 minutes from now, we get small business optimism. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Thank you, Karen. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden slammed President Trump's handling of the economy, saying that the president inherited the longest economic expansion in history and squandered it. Biden was citing the official declaration that the U.S. had entered a recession just as the coronavirus was taking hold in February. It is a presidential primary day in Georgia and West Virginia, giving both the Trump and Biden campaigns a chance to prove they can assemble a coalition strong enough to win in November. More federal workers are starting to return to their desks at federal agencies in the coronavirus lockdown. The Energy Department says the first voluntary returns of a small number of workers started just this week. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 5:49 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. Time now to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Andreas Kluth, Bloomberg Opinion columnist in Berlin, joins us now. Andreas is writing this morning about President Trump's reported threat to pull thousands of troops out of Germany. And we say reported, Andreas, because Germany says it hasn't gotten official word of the plan. So what exactly do we know right now?
We don't actually know anything except that there's this rumor. That's actually part of why Germans are, once again, I have to say, so offended, because they would expect that Trump or the ministry, the Department of Defense, Esper, right, somebody in America, in Washington, would tell them what they're considering so that there can be a discussion among allies, but they're not. They cannot have it confirmed or denied. But you're right, the Americans apparently are planning to pull out some troops. It's not the first time. It's been going on for a long time. And the question is, will that happen? Does it make sense? The answer is no. And where will that lead,
Yeah, and the report, I guess, was first reported in the Wall Street Journal is that the plan is to withdraw 9,500 more troops out of Germany. As you say, the gradual drawdown of U.S. forces from Germany has been going on for decades now. And I guess what's different here is, on its face, that in the past, the U.S. would actually tell Germany what it's doing. So what signal does this send?
It's a terrible signal, and I hope it doesn't happen. It sends the signal that America is not a reliable ally. And, of course, Germany, for its part, is also not always an ideal ally. But it further undermines, because it's not only the Germans who are watching this, it's also the other NATO partners and the other Western countries, including Australia and everyone who are watching. And, of course, as you're probably aware, there's already a sense that Trump doesn't like multilateralism, doesn't care for alliances, doesn't care much for Western values as opposed to Eastern autocracies. And there's a sense that the West is coming apart at the seams.
Is that sense well-founded right now? I mean, obviously, the president has been highly critical of NATO in the past. There are reports that Germany was upset that it wasn't invited, or that the president was upset that Germany rebuffed an invitation to attend the next G7 summit. Is this all just on the surface, or is there a risk that there really is an underlying fracturing that's happening between the U.S. and its transatlantic partners?
Unfortunately, I think it's both. So, and I can tell you here in Berlin, people are just rolling their eyes because the conventional wisdom is, yes, it's all about Trump and his ego and his vanity, and Merkel snubbed him because she said she wouldn't go to this G7 meeting that he wanted to have, and he wanted to invite her, etc. And now it's just payback, and he doesn't even mean it. He just wants to get even because it's all reality TV. That's probably true, but it is also true that underneath all of this, predating Trump, the U.S. and Europe and the U.S. and Germany have been drifting apart, started with perhaps the pivot to Asia under Obama, and that the alliances are under strain. And now there's talk of a G2 world between China and the U.S. and Europe having to choose sides, which it doesn't want to do. And because of all this talk, people, the Europeans and others, are talking about making other arrangements for their trading future, for their security future, their defense future. That doesn't mean they have an alternative, and they probably won't, but that's the instability. So what's lost is the sense that ultimately, if push comes to shove, we're in the same boat among the Western countries.
Thanks for joining us on this, Andreas. Great talking with you this morning. Bloomberg opinion columnist Andreas Kluth with us from our Berlin bureau. And you can read his piece on this. It's called U.S. Troop Cuts in Germany Would Be a Disaster. And more columns from Bloomberg Opinion. Just head over to Bloomberg.com/opinion. Or if you're a Bloomberg Terminal customer, type OPIN. Go. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
A federal judge in Boston decided a class action targeting Fidelity Investments' 401k plan will be tried via Zoom video conference and not heard by an advisory jury. The California Assembly approved a bill that would require the state's top air regulator to set carbon and greenhouse gas reduction goals for farms, wetlands, and ranches, and a discrimination suit against MVP Staffing of Illinois will not have class action status. A federal court ruled the plaintiffs were inadequate class representatives.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
Now another legal story we're watching includes Democrats in Congress proposing a sweeping police reform bill. The measure would curtail qualified immunity that shields officers from liability for rights violations in civil lawsuits. For more on the doctrine, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to former federal prosecutor George Newhouse of Richards Carrington.
So under qualified immunity, plaintiffs have to show that officers violated clearly established rights. But has that hurdle become so high that courts are requiring prior court rulings with almost identical facts?
Exactly. And this doctrine is, by the way, clearly on its way out. There's a bill pending in Congress. And as well, the Supreme Court has 9 separate cases pending cert review at the Supreme Court. The doctrine seems to be on its way out, but it's been criticized because basically the way the law has now evolved. This clearly established law means there needs to be a court decision pretty much on point, meaning completely applicable under the facts, so that if someone is accused of violating a constitutional right, but no court has ever said that specific behavior violates the Constitution, then the officer would have a qualified immunity, and the court, on a motion for summary judgment, can dismiss the lawsuit. That's been criticized as being ridiculous. Probably the best example of that is there's a Miss Alabama case involving a practice in the prison to punish or discipline the prisoners. They would lock them up literally to a hitching post out in the yard. Seems to be cruel and unusual for most people. They sued saying that this form of punishment, locking them up in the yard during the heat of the summer day, was cruel and unusual and violated their constitutional rights. And the court said, no, well, actually, there's no court case saying that exactly. So the case was dismissed. So it's been taken to an absurd reach.
And 2 justices on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, Justices Clarence Thomas and Sonia Sotomayor, have written about concerns with the doctrine for different reasons.
Which is why that it's clear that the doctrine no longer enjoys really probably anyone on the Supreme Court who would want to uphold it. Because on the right, the strict constructionists led by Justice not only Roberts and Thomas and I assume Gorsuch and Kavanaugh believe that any tinkering of a law, modification by a court, is impermissible and improper. And of course, Justice Sotomayor and probably Kagan don't believe that it's right to insulate local officials from civil rights cases. So clearly the votes are against the doctrine.
And that's George Newhouse, a senior attorney at Richards Carrington, speaking to Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by listening to the Bloomberg Law Show at 10 p.m. Eastern Time or downloading this show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures lower this morning. S&P futures down 33 points. Dow futures down 335. NASDAQ futures down 58. And the 10-year Treasury up 17/30 seconds, yield 0.81%. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The S&P 500 erases losses for the year, capping a 47% gain since its March low.
New York continues its push to reopen as coronavirus infections hit the lowest level since the pandemic began.
And the Fed meets in Washington to assess the path forward for a strong recovery.
A grand jury will investigate the shooting death of Maurice Gordon in New Jersey as the family of George Floyd prepares their final goodbye. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The baseball owners have made a new pitch to the players, and new names have surfaced as potential buyers of the Mets.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Crises emphasize character and partnership. One mission, one community, SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS.
And U.S. futures are falling after the S&P 500 inched into the green for the year. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 32 points this morning. Dow futures down 314. NASDAQ futures down 56. The DAX in Germany is down 1.9%. CAC in Paris down 1.7%. And the FTSE 100 down 1.6%. Nikkei 225 in Japan fell 0.4%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 15/30 seconds, yield 0.82%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.5% or 95 cents at $37.24 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.5% or $9.20 at $17.14.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1266 against the dollar. The yen is at 107.89. Nathan.
And Karen, just 53 3 days after bottoming out, the S&P 500 has gone into the green for the year. We're coming off the 9th rally in 11 sessions, capping a 47% gain since the March 23rd low. Esty Dweck is head of global macro strategy at Natixis Investment Managers.
A lot of these extreme moves have become shorter and shorter, both on the way down and on the way back up. I think everything seems to be priced almost to perfection, so we don't like to chase this rally. At some point, especially now that finally sentiment is turning much more bullish and the rally is broadening, there is this question of disappointment risks.
After yesterday's close, the S&P 500 is now just 5% away from a record high, though U.S. futures point to a lower open.
The rally comes as Americans across the country get back to work. New York City started reopening its doors exactly 100 days after the state's first case of COVID-19. Now, Governor Andrew Cuomo says infections are at the lowest level since the pandemic began.
We went from the worst situation in the nation, frankly, one of the worst situations on the globe, to not only flattening the curve, but to bending the curve.
Now, the question is, when will the city enter phase 2? We spoke with former Lieutenant Governor Dick Ravitch, who's part of New York City's task force to restart the economy.
To be honest with you, I don't think anybody knows. One is guessing about human nature. I think the protests are not a disincentive. I think the occasional violence that accompanies some of these protests is a major, major disincentive. And of course, the biggest question is employment. How many people are going to come away from this experience deciding, hey, we don't need a fancy office in downtown Manhattan. We can work from home.
And when it comes to retail, the industry is poised to be one of the hardest hit from the virus. According to Coresight Research, as many as 25,000 U.S. stores could close permanently because of the pandemic.
That's one of the many reasons the Federal Reserve is doing everything it can to prop up the economy. Now the central bank is expanding terms for its program to lend to small and mid-sized businesses. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It's a bid to reach more firms hit by the coronavirus-driven economic shock. The Fed lowered the minimum loan amount and raised the maximum loan limit under its Main Street lending program. It also extended loan terms to 5 years from 4 years and will allow businesses to defer principal payments for the first 2 years of the loan instead of just the first year. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. The Fed also kicks off its 2-day policy meeting in Washington today. We get the details on that from Bloomberg economics correspondent Michael McKee.
This will be a meeting for Fed officials to take stock rather than taking action. The policymakers will try to assess what the better-than-expected May jobs figures mean. Will the recession be shorter? Does the report have any implications for the speed of recovery? The answers will weigh on decisions yet to come on any next policy steps. Fed officials will also be offering their first economic forecast since January and the dot plot returns, although no rate moves are seen over the next few years. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. Speaking of forecasts, we have a grim one from the World Bank when it comes to emerging markets. The organization says for the first time since 1960, emerging economies will shrink this year. Bloomberg's Michelle Jambrisco has more.
The EMs will just disproportionately face these challenges amid the virus outbreak and the efforts to contain it. They have limited healthcare systems compared to DMs, of course, a deeply integrated supply chain, so they're much more vulnerable in relation to the global trade downturn, and they depend on a lot of foreign financing, so they'll continue to kind of struggle to keep a risk-on mode and attract those foreign investors and keep financial systems stable.
The World Bank sees global growth contracting more than 5% this year, while emerging and developing economies will shrink 2.5%. The organization predicts only 10% of countries will avoid contraction.
Still, an equity rally in Asia shows no signs of slowing. Stocks in the region posted gains overnight for a 7th straight session. Bloomberg's Juliette Sally joins us from Singapore with the details. Juliette, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Australia's ASX 200 was one of the strongest performers in the region, playing catch-up after Monday's holiday to close higher in Sydney by 2.4%. The CSI 300 was up 0.6%. South Korea's Kospi and Taiwan's TAIEX both edging higher by around 0.25%. In Hong Kong, property stocks lifted the Hang Seng towards its highest close in nearly 3 months, and the Nikkei 225 bucked the upward regional trend, closing lower by 0.4% in Tokyo as the yen advanced against the dollar and as data showed Japan's machine tool orders more than halved in May in the latest sign of the pandemic's impact on the country's factories. In Singapore, Juliette Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. S&P futures down 32 points this morning. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thank you. It's 6:07 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris is here with a look at what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Amy.
Morning, Nathan. A vigil in Houston last night for George Floyd. George's brother, Philony, says activism cannot end with his brother's funeral.
We have good police, but we have bad police. Amen. You can't sort them out, so we got to figure it out right now. All right. So, right now, I want everybody to start voting, going to council meetings and everything.
Floyd's burial is set for today. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy announced a grand jury will investigate the shooting death of an unarmed black man by a state trooper on May 23rd. That was 2 days before Floyd was killed. Murphy says the state attorney general will release the dash cam footage of the police shooting death of Maurice Gordon on Memorial Day weekend. He also had a message for protesters worried that they might have been exposed to coronavirus.
And to everyone who took to their streets and town centers, please go out and get tested for COVID-19. We cannot let what happened across New Jersey this weekend be undone by an outbreak.
Murphy says New Jersey has seen its fifth straight day of fewer than 2,000 hospitalizations from COVID-19. The New York legislature is expected to pass a criminal justice bill this week that would ban police chokeholds and allow the release of police disciplinary records. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio credited the curfew and police tactics with keeping the city calm. Police arrested 2,500 people in the past 10 days, but none on Sunday. In Washington, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and other top Democrats knelt for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence to honor Floyd before they presented a sweeping police reform bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell outright rejected any call to defund police departments.
They also know that well-trained law enforcement officers are an important part of creating safe communities, not something to defund or abolish.
Key Democrats, including presumptive presidential nominee Joe Biden, are distancing themselves from the defund push, which some supporters say is a symbolic commitment to end systemic racism and shift policing priorities rather than an actual plan to eliminate law enforcement agencies. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Amy, thanks. 6:09 on Wall Street. In time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashauer.
All right, good morning, Nathan. Another volley in the back and forth between the baseball owners and players. This time an offer from the management side, upping the amount of games to be played to 76, also upping the percentage of prorated pay to 75, but the union wants 100% more games. MLB has asked for a response by tomorrow. It's expected to be another no. And another issue has perhaps arisen, that baseball wants players to sign an acknowledgement of risk waiver. If there's no deal, MLB has the right to implement the schedule it wants, perhaps only 48 games, but the players can always choose to simply not play. Any way you look at it, bad situation right now for there to be baseball in 2020. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reports new names as potential buyers of the Mets. Joshua Harris and David Blitzer come from Wall Street, so they don't have quite the marquee value of Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez, who are said to also still be interested. But Harris already owns the Devils and Philadelphia 76ers. Talk said to be in the early stages, though Wilpon's $2.6 billion deal with Steve Cohen fell through in December, but there are no longer said to be conditions put in over when a new owner would retain control of the team. Finally, from tennis, Novak Djokovic says the U.S. Open, late August, early September in New York, should not be played. Not with the conditions that have been laid out, like players having to stay not in Manhattan, but at airport hotels, and they can only bring one person in with them. Djokovic says he needs his fitness trainer and physical therapist, and Rafael Nadal recently said he's worried more about health and safety. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, in other sports news, English soccer club Brighton is offering fans the chance to have cardboard cutouts of themselves in the stadium when the Premier League resumes, but it comes at a cost. Fans will need to send in a photo of themselves wearing a Brighton jersey and pay $25. They can't go to the games. They're closed to spectators for the season due to the coronavirus pandemic, but at least you can look like you're there. S&P futures down 31 points, Dow futures down 308, NASDAQ futures lower by 53 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Jenny Litt.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment. Feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Television. Here's Emily Chang.
U.S. federal and state regulators are working to require Google to give its users a choice about what search engine to use in a continued antitrust probe into the search giant. Regulators seeking the help of one of Google's competitors, and that is DuckDuckGo. Joining us is the CEO and founder of DuckDuckGo, Gabriel Weinberg. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, you've been a competitor to Google for many years and for a long time in trying to convince users with a sort of privacy-first stance why DuckDuckGo is a better alternative. For those who don't know, what is your case to users about why they should use your search engine instead of Google's?
Sure. I mean, quite simply, people are tired of being tracked online. And at DuckDuckGo, we really just believe people who want to be able to choose a private option online should be able to do so simply And we enable that for everybody. So we have a private search engine alternative to Google, but we also have a mobile browser that blocks trackers across the internet. So if you're kind of annoyed about ads following you around, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg of harms, of privacy harms online. There's discrimination, propaganda, etc. We protect you from all that.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Sentiment among U.S. small business owners advanced in May by the most since late 2017, with more expecting business conditions to improve as economic lockdowns are lifted. The National Federation of Independent Business Optimism Index climbed 3.5 points to 94.4 from a 7-year low a month earlier. Right now, U.S. stock index futures are moving lower, with S&P futures down 35 points, Dow futures down 342, NASDAQ futures down 69, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%, 10-year Treasury up 16/30 seconds, yield 0.82%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.7% on $1.03 to $37.16 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $10.10 at $17.15.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1270 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2651 and the yen 107.88. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Good morning, Karen. President Trump says he will discuss ideas for revamping police tactics in response to protests over the killing of George Floyd, but has provided no specific changes. The president has demanded a law and order approach to the protests. Attorney General William Barr tells Fox News that Secret Service did tell the president to go to the White House bunker as large protests unfolded outside. That contradicts the president's account of what happened. The World Health Organization says coronavirus transmission by people who aren't showing symptoms is very rare, and that contradicts a widely held belief among health officials and researchers that the disease is being spread by asymptomatic carriers. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 6:19 on Wall Street. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Ryan Dietrich is with us now, senior market strategist at LPL Financial, on the morning after the S&P 500 got back its losses for the year. Good morning, Ryan. I guess the question now is, with futures pulling back, does this rally have even further to go? What's your view?
Well, first off, good morning, and thanks for having me. But you're right. I mean, what a wild, wild ride 2020's been, right? I mean, we think, put it this way, we just had the largest 50-day rally in history. We know that. The S&P's done a complete round trip to come back to break even. It makes a little bit of sense to us, after just this incredible run, to have some type of well-deserved correction or consolidation. I mean, you get a little geeky, look at put-to-call ratios. I mean, small traders are getting extremely optimistic here. It just seems like, in fact, June, you go back to the year 2000, June's actually the worst month of the year. So seasonality is not doing anyone any favors. But it just really, it's put in perspective. Guys, look at some numbers yesterday. When at the lows, we were down 30% for the year. In the history of the S&P 500, we've never had a year that was down 30% at any point, go all the way back to positive. Now, believe me, this year very well could do it, and we could have some more gains the second half of this year. But that just, I think, really sums up how rare the action has been this year. We've all, we've lived through it, so we know it, but it just is really fascinating.
Oh, it seems like the market right now isn't necessarily pricing in a correction. What do you think is going to be the catalyst that could reverse market sentiment potentially?
Well, like you said, the word sentiment. I mean, I just think we all remember March 23rd, how we all felt when stocks were down, bonds were down, gold was down, everything was down. It felt like the end of the world. Now we've got the optimism. I mean, just, the realization that yesterday the NBER finally said we're in a recession. It's the realization that, yes, we're in a recession, but then we look at some of the data that's going on, and it's like, wait a minute, they actually just said we're in a recession. We might be coming out of this recession with last week's jobs numbers and some of the other potentially improving data. What we're really looking forward to this week You know, what could... Well, the question was what could spark some weakness. I mean, it could be the Fed on Wednesday, right? The Fed on Wednesday, tomorrow, I guess, they could be a little bit more hawkish. They could actually say, hey, things are turning around a little bit. We're still here. The Fed is not going anywhere. Zero interest rates are here for a long time. But maybe the Fed gives a little bit more of a hawkish tone. And again, we're not anticipating any major correction. By no means are we going to go back down and touch the March 23rd lows, in our opinion. But when you look back at major moves off of major lows historically, we look at the last five, going back to 1970, you have about a 9% correction off of the major lows. And we think, after over a 40% rally, that could be perfectly normal and maybe even a little bit healthy. And who knows, it could be the Fed tomorrow kicking things off with a little more of a hawkish stance to surprise markets.
Are you adjusting your target for the end of this year, given what all that you're saying here?
Yeah, we actually upped our equity exposure the last week of March. We were market weight equities for over a year, and we upped it. And at the time, we had a fair value target of 3150 on the S&P 500, and that felt like a mile away at the time when we did it way back in late March. And as of now, we're talking potentially about doing that, but we are holding still. And I know that's right about where we are, right? I mean, that's right where we are. So we think there could be a little bit more upside here the rest of this year. But as of this time, when we look at just, see the numbers, right? Historically high PE multiples, but no one really trusts the E part of the PE multiple with the optimism that's there. We think, there's going to be a little bit more upside this year, but I think it's more muted. And by no means are we bearish, though. I mean, we were one of the few places that upped our equity target in late March when a lot of other places were downgrading. So we've used it as an opportunity, but what we do think, kind of talk about markets here, we think what brought us to the dance could do well the second half of the year. Specifically, the technology names, healthcare names. I'm fully aware of the cyclical value trade is just awesome the past 2 weeks. But again, we think maybe the realization that the economy is opening up, but it might not be quite as good the second half of this year as stock market's pricing in, and some of those other areas that kind of brought us to the dance, large cap tech, and healthcare. Maybe it'll take the baton back before the second half of this year is all said and done.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where things go from here. Thanks for your insights this morning, Ryan. Good talking with you. That's Ryan Dietrich, Senior Market Strategist at LPL Financial. Again, the Fed could be a catalyst as they begin their two-day June meeting this morning. It ends tomorrow, 2 p.m. Wall Street time with the policy decision and the news conference from Chairman Powell. We'll have it all for you here on Bloomberg Radio. Ahead of all that, futures pulling back after clawing their way back up. S&P futures down 34 points. Dow futures lower by 336. NASDAQ futures down 60 points right now. European stocks also moving lower this morning, anywhere from 1.4 to 2% lower. 10 years up, 14.30 seconds. Yield on the 10-year Treasury, 0.82%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The Fed kicks off a two-day policy meeting today, and investors will be listening up to hear what, if anything, policymakers plan to do next to continue to support the economy as it makes its way back from the coronavirus pandemic-related shutdowns. New study shows that the COVID-19 economic shutdown has hurt black-owned businesses the most among racial and ethnic groups in the U.S., a 41% decline from February to April. Immigrant business owners also fared poorly. The NTSB is recommending closing a loophole that allows some lithium-ion batteries to be transported on planes. The recommendation comes after batteries were flown from Florida to Toronto by FedEx and then loaded into a delivery truck where they burst into flames. The truck was destroyed, and the NTSB said that if they'd caught fire while in the air, they could have brought down the plane. Stock futures point to a lower open this morning after the S&P 500 turned positive for the year yesterday. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all.